Imagine the city at night, a glittering tapestry of ambition and light. High, in a tower of glass and steel, a single office remains illuminated. Inside, a figure sits bathed in the cool glow of a computer screen. Charts and graphs painting a picture of undeniable success, of goals met and exceeded. By all the standards our world has created, this person has won the game. They have the career, the status, the possessions, the symbols of a life well lived. But in the quiet hum of the machine, in the reflection on the dark window overlooking the sprawling metropolis, there is a profound and silent emptiness. A question, not of thought, but of feeling, echoes in the space around them. A question that asks, is this truly all there is? This feeling, this deep, existential ache, is the quiet companion of so many in our modern world. We are taught to run, to climb, to achieve, to accumulate. We live our lives on a vast, spinning wheel, convinced that happiness lies just at the next turn, the next promotion, the next purchase. We are surrounded by noise, a relentless flood of information, of notifications, of opinions, of pressures to be more, to do more, to have more. And in this endless pursuit of the external, we have become disconnected from our own internal landscape. We feel a constant, low-grade anxiety, a sense of being perpetually overwhelmed, of living a life that somehow isn't truly our own. But what if there was another way? What if the solution was not to run faster, but to stop running altogether? What if peace was not a destination to be reached, but a ground to be stood upon? There exists an ancient path, a wisdom tradition, born not from acquiring answers, but from dissolving the questions themselves. It does not offer a new set of beliefs to cling to, or a dogma to follow. Instead, it offers a set of practical tools, a way of looking, a gentle but radical art of living known as Zen. It suggests that the meaning and tranquility we so desperately seek in the world outside can only be found in one place, the quiet, vast, and often unexplored territory of our own mind. This is not an invitation to escape the world, but an invitation to finally, truly arrive in it. It is a journey inward, into the very heart of your own experience, to discover a peace that does not depend on circumstance, and a clarity that has been waiting for you all along. The journey inward begins with a single, honest admission, a courageous willingness to look directly at the nature of our own experience, to return to that quiet office, to that feeling of profound emptiness amidst success, is to touch upon the fundamental starting point of this entire path. The ancient language of this tradition, Pali, has a word for this feeling. The word is dukkha. It is often translated simply as suffering, but this single English word is far too small to carry its true weight. Suffering brings to mind immense tragedy, unbearable pain, loss, and sickness. And while dukkha certainly includes these things, it is also infinitely more subtle, more pervasive, and more intimately familiar to every single one of us. Dukkha is the low-grade, persistent feeling of unsatisfactoriness that hums beneath the surface of our lives. It is the sense that something is not quite right, that something is missing. It is the friction we feel when reality does not conform to our desires. It is the tension of waiting for a result, the anxiety of protecting what we have, the disappointment when a pleasant moment ends. It is the feeling of being stuck in traffic when you are already late. It is the subtle irritation at an unkind word. It is the restlessness that keeps us scrolling through our phones, looking for a distraction. It is the quiet ache of loneliness, even when surrounded by people. It is the exhaustion of constantly trying to be someone, to uphold an image, to prove our worth. This is dukkha. It is not an anomaly. It is the very texture of an unexamined life. the default state of a mind at war with the way things are. To name this condition, to call it dukkha, is not an act of pessimism. It is not a declaration that life is inherently bad or that joy is impossible. On the contrary, it is the most hopeful and compassionate act imaginable. It is the act of a great physician who, instead of offering false comfort, looks with clarity and says, "Here is the diagnosis." To diagnose an illness is not to condemn the patient. It is the first, essential step toward a cure. The wisdom of Zen, at its root, approaches the human condition in this way. It does not judge our anxiety, our dissatisfaction, or our pain as a moral failing or a sign of weakness. It does not suggest that we are flawed because we are not perpetually happy. Instead, it recognizes dukkha as a universal truth, a fundamental characteristic of our shared human experience when we are operating under a set of deep-seated misperceptions about ourselves and the world. To acknowledge dukkha is to finally stop pretending. It is to put down the heavy burden of trying to be perfectly happy all the time, and instead to turn with gentle curiosity toward the reality of our own unease. This honest recognition is the gateway. It is the moment the journey truly begins. So, if this pervasive dissatisfaction is the condition, what is its cause? The physician's diagnosis points to a very specific source. Dukkha arises from a fundamental mismatch between our desires and reality. Specifically, it comes from grasping, from clinging, from our desperate attempt to hold on to things that are by their very nature fleeting. We experience a moment of joy, a perfect sunset, a loving embrace, a feeling of success, and immediately a subtle tension arises. We want it to last. We try to grasp the pleasant feeling, to freeze the moment in time. But life is a river, not a statue. The moment passes, as all moments do, and in our clinging, we are left with the ache of its absence. We create suffering by resisting the natural flow of life. Conversely, when we experience something unpleasant, a difficult emotion, a painful memory, a frustrating situation, we do the opposite. We resist, we push it away, we try to deny its existence. This aversion is simply the other side of the same coin of grasping. We are still at war with reality, demanding that it be different than it is. This constant, exhausting battle of pushing and pulling, of clinging to what we want and resisting what we don't want, is the engine that generates dukkha. We are like someone standing in a river, trying to hold back the current with our bare hands. It is a futile struggle, and the effort itself is what wears us down, what creates the deep sense of friction and unease that defines our lives. The wisdom of Zen does not suggest we should not enjoy pleasure or that we should seek out pain. It simply asks us to see the mechanism clearly, to notice how our automatic habit of clinging and resisting is the very thing that creates the cage of our own suffering. There is a story that illustrates this with heartbreaking beauty. A young woman named Kisa Gotami lived in the time of the Buddha. Her life was filled with joy, for she had a husband she loved and a beautiful baby son. But one day, tragedy struck. Her son fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness. She refused to accept that her child was gone. Clinging to his small, lifeless body, she went from house to house, from person to person, begging for a medicine that could bring him back to life. Some people turned away from her. Others pitied her. Some thought she had lost her mind. But one kind man saw the depth of her despair and suggested she go see the Buddha, for he was a great physician who might have the cure she sought. Carrying her son, she ran to find him. She bowed at his feet and pleaded, "Teacher, can you give me the medicine that will cure my boy?" The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion and said, "I can, but to make the medicine, I need one special ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed." Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. A mustard seed was such a simple thing to find, but the Buddha continued, his voice gentle but firm. The mustard seed must come from a house where no one has ever lost a child, a husband, a parent, or a friend. It must be a house untouched by death. Filled with a desperate energy, Kisa Gotami began her search. She went to the first house, her heart pounding. "The Buddha has sent me," she explained. "I need a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son. Have you known death in this house?" The woman of the house looked at her with sad eyes. "I have. I lost my father just last year. I can give you a mustard seed, but not from a house untouched by death." Disappointed, Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. "The living are few," one person told her, "but the dead are many. Do not remind us of our deepest grief." Another said, "I lost my wife." Another, "I lost my sister." She went to every house in the village, rich and poor, high and low. She never found a single home that had not been visited by death. As the sun began to set, the reality of her search began to sink in. She sat by the side of the road, watching the flickering lights of the village appear one by one, only to be extinguished later in the night. The truth washed over her, not as a thought, but as a deep bodily understanding. Her grief was not hers alone. Her pain was not a unique curse. The loss she felt, the profound ache of impermanence, was the shared inheritance of every living being. In that moment, her frantic, desperate clinging to her own personal tragedy dissolved. She gently laid her son's body down and returned to the Buddha. He saw her coming and asked, "Have you brought the mustard seed?" She shook her head. "The people of the village have told me," she said, her voice now quiet and clear, "that the living are few, but the dead are many." The Buddha nodded. "You have understood," he said. "You thought that you alone had lost a son. The law of death is that among all living things there is no permanence." Kisa Gotami's story is our story. Her journey from isolated, frantic suffering to a shared, compassionate understanding is the very path we are all invited to walk. The Buddha's task was not a cruel trick. It was a profound act of healing. He did not take her pain away. He helped her to see it in its true context, as part of the vast, intricate web of life and death that connects us all. This is the ultimate power of acknowledging dukkha. It shatters our illusion of isolation. The anxiety you feel, the grief you carry, the restlessness that haunts you, is not a sign that you have failed. It is a sign that you are human. It is the common ground upon which we can all meet with empathy and with understanding. Recognizing this is the first great liberation. The burden of our own personal story begins to lighten when we see it reflected in the eyes of everyone we meet. We have now diagnosed the condition, this fundamental unease called dukkha. We have seen that it is a universal experience, not a personal flaw, and we have understood that it arises from our struggle against the natural flow of reality. This brings us to the next crucial question on our inward journey. What is the instrument of this struggle? What is the architect of this clinging and aversion? To find the answer, we must now turn our attention inward to face the restless, chattering, and endlessly creative source of our own unease, the ceaseless activity of the thinking mind. If our journey inward begins by acknowledging the fundamental condition of unease, of dukkha, our very next step requires us to meet its architect face to face. We must turn our attention to the source of the clinging and the aversion, the relentless engine of dissatisfaction. This architect is not some external force, nor is it a flaw in the fabric of the universe. It is closer than our own breath. It is the constant, ceaseless, and almost entirely involuntary stream of thought that populates our every waking moment. It is the voice in the head. Take a moment, right now, to listen. Beneath your attention to these words, there is another layer of activity, a voice that is commenting, judging, analyzing. Perhaps it's agreeing, or disagreeing, or wondering what will be said next. Perhaps it has already drifted off, reminding you of an email you need to send, replaying a conversation from yesterday, or planning what you will have for dinner. This inner narrator is so constantly present that most of us don't even notice it. We assume that its voice is our voice. We assume that its thoughts are our thoughts. We believe, without question, that we are this narrator. The tradition of Zen has a wonderfully descriptive name for this phenomenon. It is called the monkey mind. The metaphor is perfect. Imagine a restless monkey, trapped inside your skull, unable to stay still for even a single moment. It swings frantically from one branch of thought to another. In one instant, it is on the branch of the past, picking at the fruit of old regrets, re-examining past hurts, chewing on the bitter rind of embarrassment. Then, with a screech, it leaps to a branch of the future, nervously peering into the mist, imagining all the things that could go wrong, constructing elaborate scenarios of failure and disaster. It chatters incessantly, a constant monologue of judgment, comparison, and fear. It criticizes you. It criticizes others. It worries about what they think of you. It is never, ever, simply here. It is a creature that lives exclusively in the realms of what was and what if, and it completely ignores the reality of what is. We have lived with this frantic creature for so long that we have become completely identified with it. We believe we are the monkey. Its anxieties are our anxieties. Its judgments are our truths. This brings us to the single most liberating realization on the entire spiritual path. It is a truth so simple, yet so profound, that it has the power to dismantle the entire structure of our suffering. The truth is this: you are not the monkey. You are not the voice in your head. You are not your thoughts. For most of us, this idea is radical, even nonsensical at first. If I am not my thoughts, then who am I? The entirety of our identity, our sense of self, seems to be woven from the very fabric of this inner monologue. But consider this: if you are aware of a thought, there must be two distinct things present: the thought itself and the one who is aware of the thought. If you can observe the monkey, you cannot be the monkey. You are the space in which the monkey appears. A helpful metaphor is to think of your mind as the sky. Your thoughts, your emotions, your memories are like the clouds. Sometimes the sky is filled with dark, stormy clouds of anger or sadness. Sometimes it is filled with fluffy, white clouds of happiness. Sometimes it is perfectly clear. But through it all, the sky itself remains unchanged. The sky is not the clouds. It is the vast, open, silent awareness that holds all the clouds, that allows them to come and go without resistance. The spiritual practice, in its essence, is to shift your identification away from the ever-changing clouds and to learn to rest in your true nature as the open, spacious sky. When a thought of anxiety arises, instead of saying, "I am anxious," you can learn to say, "I am aware of a thought of anxiety." This small shift in language creates a space. In that space, there is freedom. In that space, there is peace. The thought may still be there, but it no longer has the power to define you. It is simply weather, passing through the vastness of your being. Let's look more closely at the monkey's two favorite playgrounds, the past and the future. It is a master time traveler, but it only ever travels to places of pain. When it travels to the past, it acts like a compulsive archaeologist of regret. It digs up every mistake, every awkward moment, every failure. It forces you to re-watch your life's most embarrassing scenes on an endless loop. It analyzes conversations from years ago, searching for what you should have said differently. It generates wave after wave of guilt, shame, and sadness, all based on events that are over and cannot be changed. Its activity creates a heavy anchor, chaining us to a version of ourselves that no longer exists, preventing us from experiencing the freshness and possibility of the present. Then, with a sudden leap, it rockets into the future, transforming into an architect of anxiety. Its primary building material is the question, what if? What if I lose my job? What if I get sick? What if my presentation goes badly? What if they don't like me? It constructs intricate and terrifying blueprints of potential disasters, most of which will never happen. It creates 100 imaginary catastrophes for every one that might actually occur. Living under the influence of this anxious architect means we are in a constant state of low-grade fear, tensing against a future that exists only in our imagination. We are so busy worrying about the next step on the path that we fail to see the flower growing at our feet. The great irony is that life itself can only be lived in one place, the present moment. The past is a memory trace. The future is a projection. The only reality you can ever touch, taste, or feel is the reality of right now. The monkey mind, in its frantic travels, is a thief that robs you of the only life you will ever have. It is crucial to understand that this monkey mind is not evil or malicious. It is simply a machine, a creature of habit. The brain has, over millions of years of evolution, developed a negativity bias. It is designed to look for threats, to scan for what is wrong. As a survival mechanism, our ancestors who worried about the rustling in the bushes were more likely to survive than those who did not. In our modern world, this mechanism is still running, but instead of scanning for saber-toothed tigers, it scans for social rejection, financial instability, and existential dread. It runs along old, deeply carved neurological pathways. The same worries, the same judgments, the same insecurities are replayed over and over again, simply because that is the path of least resistance in the brain. Seeing it this way, as an impersonal, conditioned mechanism, is deeply freeing. It is not you who is flawed or negative. It is an old, biological, and psychological program that is running on its own. Your task is not to blame yourself for the program, but simply to stop letting it run your life. So how do we do this? What is the method for taming this frantic creature? Our first instinct is to fight it. When a negative thought appears, we argue with it. We try to force it out of our minds. We try to silence the monkey. A Zen master would say, this is like finding yourself in a pool of muddy water and trying to clear it by splashing and stirring frantically. The more you struggle, the more you agitate the mud, and the murkier the water becomes. The harder you fight your thoughts, the more power you give them. The method of Zen is radically different. It is profoundly counterintuitive. There is a story of a student who comes to his master, complaining, "Master, my mind will not be quiet. The thoughts never stop. What can I do?" The master silently picks up a glass of water from a nearby stream. It is filled with dirt and sediment, completely opaque. He places it on the table in front of the student. "Your mind is like this water," he says. He then sits in silence. The student waits, expecting a secret technique, a powerful instruction. But the master does nothing. They sit together for a long time. The student, growing impatient, watches the glass. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the heavier particles of mud begin to drift downward. The sediment begins to collect at the bottom. After an hour, the top layer of the water is almost clear. After 2 hours, the entire glass is filled with crystal clear water, with a layer of inert mud resting peacefully at the bottom. The master finally speaks. "You see," he says, "you do not have to do anything. Simply let it be, and the mud will settle on its own. This is the instruction. You do not have to fight the monkey. You do not have to silence it. You simply have to stop playing its game. You stop feeding it with your attention and your belief. When a thought arises, you simply notice it, without judgment. You see it as what it is, a transient event in your consciousness. You can even label it gently in your mind. Ah, this is worrying. This is judging. This is planning. And then, you gently return your attention to your anchor in the present moment, such as the feeling of your breath entering and leaving your body. You do not push the thought away. You do not follow it down its rabbit hole. You simply let it be, a cloud passing through the vast sky of your awareness. Each time you do this, you are weakening the habit of identification. You are cutting off the monkey's food supply. It might screech and chatter for a while, demanding your attention. But if you consistently and gently refuse to engage, it will eventually begin to calm down. The mud will settle. A natural clarity, a natural quietness that was always there beneath the noise, will begin to reveal itself. This is the practice. It is the simple, moment-by-moment work of learning to be the sky, not the clouds. And as we become more established in this position of the silent observer, a new, even deeper question naturally arises. If I am not this voice, not this collection of memories, fears, and beliefs that I have always called me, then who or what am I? To answer this, we must journey even deeper into the very heart of the illusion of the self. We have journeyed to a remarkable vantage point. We have turned our gaze inward, first acknowledging the pervasive unease of dukkha, and then meeting the frantic, chattering monkey mind that creates it. And in this meeting, we arrived at a revolutionary insight. We are not the ceaseless voice in our heads. We are the silent, spacious awareness in which that voice appears. This realization, as freeing as it is, immediately opens the door to a question that lies at the very heart of human existence, a mystery that has haunted philosophers, saints, and sages for millennia. The question is simple to ask, yet its depths are boundless. If I am not my thoughts, then who or what am I? Our entire lives are built upon the assumption of a central I. We feel, deep in our bones, that there is a thinker behind the thoughts, a feeler of the feelings, a pilot in the cockpit of the body, steering our course through life. This me is the protagonist of our personal story, the hero of our own epic. It has a name, a history, a personality, a list of likes and dislikes. We spend our days trying to protect this me, to enhance it, to make it feel secure and happy. But the path of Zen invites us to do something truly radical. It asks us to become detectives, to take up a magnifying glass, and search for this self we so readily assume is there. Let us begin this investigation. Where does this I reside? Is it your body? Look at your hands. They have changed since you were a child. Every cell in your body is in a state of constant flux, dying and being replaced. In 7 to 10 years, you will have an almost entirely new physical structure. The body is a process, a flowing river of matter, not a solid, unchanging thing. So the body cannot be the permanent I. Is it your name? Your name was given to you by others. It is a convenient label, but it is not you. Is it your job, your role as a parent, a child, a friend? These roles are temporary, shifting with the seasons of life. You are not your profession. Is it your personality, your collection of traits? We know that our personality changes, that we can be patient one moment and irritable the next, courageous in one situation and fearful in another. Our moods and characteristics are as shifting as the weather. As we continue this investigation, we find that everything we try to grasp as the solid, permanent I dissolves under scrutiny like a mirage in the desert. This is where we encounter one of the most profound, challenging, and ultimately liberating teachings of the Buddha, the teaching of anatta, or no self. A great deal of confusion arises from this term. Anatta does not mean that you do not exist. It does not mean that you are nothing. Look at your hand again. It is undeniably there. You are here, reading these words, breathing, living. The teaching of no self is more subtle and far more beautiful. It means that you do not exist as a separate, independent, and permanent entity. The feeling we have of being a distinct I sealed inside our skin, separate from the rest of the universe, is a persistent and powerful illusion. A wonderful way to understand this is to consider a wave in the ocean. A wave has a clear form. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. We can point to it and say, there is a wave. But can we extract the wave from the ocean? Is there a solid wave thing that exists independently of the water? Of course not. The wave is simply a momentary form that the entire ocean is taking. The wave is the ocean waving. In precisely the same way, you and I are the universe peopling. We are a process, a pattern, a temporary manifestation of the whole, not a separate part that has been dropped into it. To make this less abstract, the wisdom of this tradition provides a systematic breakdown of our experience. It suggests that what we call a self is actually the coming together of 5 distinct processes known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas. Imagine them as 5 heaps of components that, when assembled in a particular way, give the appearance of a functioning whole. The first is form. This is the physical body, the world of matter, everything we can see and touch. As we have seen, this is an ever-changing process, not a solid entity. The second is feeling. This is the raw data of our sensory experience before we even put a name to it. It is the immediate experience of something as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is incredibly fleeting. The pleasant warmth of a fire becomes unpleasant if we get too close. The taste of a sweet fruit becomes cloying if we eat too much. These feelings are constantly arising and passing away. The third is perception. This is the faculty that recognizes and labels our experience. It sees a collection of colors and shapes and says, tree. It hears a certain vibration and says, sad music. This process is entirely dependent on our past conditioning and memory. 2 people can look at the same piece of art and have completely different perceptions. The fourth is mental formations. This is the vast and turbulent realm of our habits, biases, opinions, intentions, moods, and all the activities of the monkey mind. This is where our desires, our fears, our anger, and our love reside. We have already seen how impersonal and conditioned these mental patterns are. The fifth is consciousness. This is the raw faculty of knowing, the light of awareness that illuminates our experience. But in this analysis, consciousness is not a singular, all-powerful soul or observer. It is also a dependent process. I consciousness arises only when an I and a visible form come together. Ear consciousness arises only when an ear and a sound come together. It is not a permanent fixture, but a flickering light that arises and ceases based on conditions. When we look deeply into these 5 categories, which encompass the totality of our human experience, we find that there is nothing we can point to and say, "This is the permanent, unchanging me." The self is not found in any one of the parts, nor is it something other than the parts. The self is the name we give to the dynamic, interacting dance of these 5 processes. It is a verb, not a noun. There is a famous dialogue from an ancient Buddhist text that captures this perfectly. A Greek king named Melinda, a man of great intellect, approached a wise sage named Nagasena. The king wanted to test the sage's wisdom. He asked, "By what name are you known, venerable sir?" "I am known as Nagasena, O king," the sage replied. "But Nagasena is only a designation, a convenient name. There is no permanent person to be found here." King Melinda was astonished and delighted by this philosophical challenge. He replied, "If there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes and eats this food? Who lives the holy life?" He then pointed to the magnificent chariot that had brought him there. "Venerable sir, is the pole of this chariot the chariot?" "No, O king," Nagasena replied. "Are the wheels the chariot?" "No, O king." "Is the axle, or the body, or the reins the chariot?" To each question, Nagasena answered no. Then, the king challenged, "Are all these parts together the chariot?" "No, O king." "Is there something outside of these parts that is the chariot?" "No, O king." The king was triumphant. Then, "Venerable sir, you have spoken a falsehood. There is no chariot." The sage Nagasena remained calm. He asked the king, "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here today? Did you not come in a chariot?" He then explained, "Just as the word chariot is a convenient name we give to the collection of the pole, the axle, the wheels, and the body, assembled and working together, so Nagasena is a convenient name for the collection of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. In the ultimate sense, there is no permanent person or self to be found." This realization can be frightening at first. It feels like the ground beneath our feet is being pulled away. If there is no me, then what is the point? Who is living my life? Who will die when my body dies? But this fear comes from a misunderstanding. It is the small, constructed ego self that is afraid. It is the prison guard who is terrified that the prison walls might crumble. The letting go of this illusory self is not annihilation. It is the ultimate liberation. The separate self is a source of endless anxiety. It is a fragile identity that we must constantly defend from criticism, from failure, from old age, and ultimately from death. It is the root of our fear, our greed, our jealousy, and our conflict with others. When the wave realizes that it is, and always has been, the entire ocean, what is there to be afraid of? When it sees that the other waves are also the ocean, how can there be any true conflict? The fear of death is predicated on the idea that there is a me that will be extinguished. But if the me is an ever-changing process, a pattern of the universe, then what is there that truly dies? The pattern simply changes. The energy transforms. Letting go of the self allows us to finally relax, to stop fighting the universe, and to merge with the magnificent, intelligent, and mysterious flow of life itself. We become less like a rigid statue and more like a dancer, moving in perfect harmony with the music of existence. We are left now with a profound and practical question. If there is no permanent CEO in the driver's seat, no central controller pulling the levers, then what governs the unfolding of this life? What ensures that this dance of the five aggregates has coherence and consequence? If it is not a self that acts, what is it that determines the course of our experience? The answer lies in a universal law, a natural principle of cause and effect that is as impersonal and as reliable as gravity. To understand this, we must now explore the true meaning of karma. We have journeyed into the very heart of our perceived identity and found something astonishing. We have discovered that the solid, separate self we thought we were is an illusion, a beautiful and complex dance of impermanent processes. The question that naturally follows this profound realization is one of responsibility and control. If there is no fixed I in charge, what then governs the course of our lives? Are we simply adrift in a sea of chaos, subject to random chance? The ancient wisdom of Zen provides an answer that is as elegant as it is empowering. The universe is not chaotic. It operates according to a precise and impersonal law, a principle of cause and effect that is as fundamental as gravity. This principle is known as karma. Now, this word, karma, is perhaps one of the most misunderstood concepts to have traveled from the East to the West. In popular culture, it has been simplified into a kind of cosmic justice system, a celestial scoreboard where good deeds earn points and bad deeds lead to swift punishment. We talk about instant karma when someone who cuts us off in traffic immediately gets a flat tire. We think of it as fate, an unchangeable destiny written in the stars, often used to explain away suffering as a punishment for some unknown past transgression. To find our way to the truth, we must first let go of these popular caricatures. The authentic teaching of karma is not about fate, and it is not about a divine judge rewarding and punishing a separate self. It is something far more intimate, more psychological, and infinitely more empowering. The Buddha himself defined it with perfect clarity. He said, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind. This is the key." Karma is not the action itself, but the volition, the motive, the quality of intention that lies behind the action. It is the energy that propels the thought, the word, or the deed. This shifts the entire focus from the external world to our own internal landscape. An action performed accidentally carries a different karmic weight than the very same action performed with malicious intent. The consequences are born not from the event, but from the state of mind that gave birth to it. The most helpful way to understand this is to think of your mind as a fertile garden. It is your garden, and you are its sole, responsible gardener. Every moment, you are planting seeds. Every thought that arises from a place of greed, of wanting more, of clinging, is a seed. Every word spoken in anger, judgment, or hatred is a seed. Every action born of confusion, delusion, or fear is a seed. These are like planting thorns and weeds and poison ivy in your garden. And just as surely as a thistle seed will produce a thistle, these seeds of unwholesome intention will, in time, bear the fruit of suffering. They create anxiety, conflict, and a deeper sense of dissatisfaction, of dukkha. Conversely, every thought that arises from a place of generosity and letting go is a seed. Every word spoken with kindness, compassion, and truth is a seed. Every action born of clarity, wisdom, and love is a seed. These are like planting seeds of nourishing vegetables, fragrant flowers, and magnificent fruit trees. And just as surely as an apple seed will produce an apple tree, these seeds of wholesome intention will, in their own time, bear the fruit of happiness, peace, and clarity. Seen this way, karma is not a punishment from an outside force. It is the simple, organic, and unavoidable result of our own planting. You are creating your experience of reality in every moment through the quality of your intentions. The profound implication of this is that you are not a victim of your life. You are its creator. This is the ultimate empowerment. It hands the full responsibility for your happiness and your suffering back to you. The state of your mental garden today is the result of your planting in the past. If it is overgrown with the weeds of anxiety and resentment, it is because those seeds were sown. But the beauty of this law is that it is not fatalistic. You are not eternally condemned to live in a garden of weeds. The present moment is always a new opportunity. Right now, you hold a trowel in one hand and a packet of new seeds in the other. You can choose to stop watering the thorns of past resentments. You can choose to stop scattering the seeds of future worries. You can, right here, right now, begin the work of tending your garden. You can gently pull a weed of judgment. You can plant a seed of forgiveness. You can water a sprout of gratitude. You are not defined by the garden you inherited from your past self. You are defined by the choices you make as a gardener in this very moment. The power of this present moment choice to transform a life is illustrated in the fearsome story of Angulimala. In the time of the Buddha, there was a notorious serial killer who terrorized the kingdom of Kosala. His name was Angulimala, which means garland of fingers, for he wore a gruesome necklace made from the fingers of his victims. He was a figure of pure terror, so fearsome that entire villages would empty at the news of his approach. One day, the Buddha learned that Angulimala was operating in a forest nearby. Despite warnings from everyone, the Buddha calmly and deliberately began to walk down the road that led into that very forest. Soon enough, Angulimala saw him. "Stop, monk!" he roared, drawing his sword and beginning to run. But a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was walking calmly and Angulimala was running with all his might, he could not catch up. Exhausted and bewildered, he shouted again, "Stop, monk! Stand still." The Buddha, continuing to walk, turned his head and said with perfect serenity, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." These words struck Angulimala like a bolt of lightning. He did not understand them with his intellect, but he felt their truth in his heart. "What do you mean, monk?" he asked, panting. "I have stopped forever from doing violence to living beings," the Buddha explained. "I have cast away all weapons, but you have no restraint. That is why I have stopped, and you have not." In that moment, the weight of his horrific actions crashed down upon Angulimala. He saw the madness of his violent crusade, the endless cycle of hatred and fear he was perpetuating. He threw down his sword, fell to his knees before the Buddha, and begged to be accepted as a disciple. The Buddha accepted him. Angulimala became a monk, and through diligent practice, he completely purified his mind and became an arhat, a fully awakened being. The story does not end there, however. Karma is a law of nature. The seeds he had planted in the past still had to bear some fruit. When he went into the towns to beg for food, people who remembered his past deeds would throw stones and sticks at him. He would often return to the monastery with his head bleeding and his robes torn. But while his body experienced the results of his past actions, his mind was completely at peace. He felt no anger, no resentment. He had stopped planting new seeds of hatred. His inner transformation was complete. The story of Angulimala is a testament to the radical power of the present moment. It shows that no matter how dark our past, No matter how overgrown our mental garden is with thorns, the potential for awakening, for planting new seeds, is always available. Karma is not about being trapped by the past. It is about being liberated by the present. So, the practice of working with karma is not about mechanically performing good deeds to stockpile a happy future. To do so, with the intention of being rewarded, is still a form of subtle greed, another unwholesome seed. The true practice is one of purification. We cultivate wholesome states like generosity and kindness, not to get something, but because they are, in themselves, a more peaceful and harmonious way to live. They are their own reward. The clarity and joy that come from a generous heart are the direct fruit of the seed of generosity. The suffering and isolation that come from a hateful mind are the direct fruit of the seed of hatred. The law is simple, immediate, and inescapable. We are the gardeners. The mind is the garden. Intention is the seed, and the quality of our life is the fruit. This understanding places the reins of our existence firmly back in our own hands. We are not passengers on a journey whose destination is already fixed. We are the navigators, and the quality of our every intention is setting the course. This power to choose, this ability to plant new seeds, is exercised in only one domain, the only place where life truly exists. To understand how to become a master gardener, we must now turn our attention to the soil itself, to the rich, fertile ground of the present moment. We have arrived at a pivotal understanding. Our lives, our experiences, and our sense of peace are not dictated by an unchangeable fate, but are shaped, moment by moment, by the intentions we hold in our minds. We are the gardeners of our own reality. This realization is profoundly empowering, but it also presents us with a crucial question. If our power to plant new seeds, to change the course of our lives, exists only in the present moment, then where are we living? For most of us, the answer is unsettling. We live almost anywhere but here. We are ghosts, haunting the corridors of the past, or anxious prophets, trying to secure a foothold in the imagined landscape of the future. The present moment, the only place where life actually unfolds, is a forgotten country, a place we visit only by accident, startled into it by a sudden shock or a moment of breathtaking beauty, only to be whisked away again by the next thought that arises. Think about your day so far. How much of it have you truly been present for? During your breakfast, were you tasting the food? Or were you already planning your morning meetings? While driving, were you feeling the wheel in your hands? Or were you replaying a difficult conversation from yesterday? Even now, as you listen to these words, a part of your mind is likely drifting, planning, worrying, remembering. We have become so accustomed to this state of divided attention, this inner homelessness, that we consider it normal. But in the view of Zen, this constant fleeing of the now is the fundamental source of our disconnection from life itself. Why does the mind so desperately avoid the present moment? The answer is simple. The thinking mind, the ego, the monkey mind, cannot survive here. The ego is a story, a narrative that we tell ourselves about who we are. This story is woven entirely from the threads of the past memories, our accomplishments, our wound sand. The threads of the future are hopes, our ambitions, our fears. The self is a creature of time. It needs the past for its identity, and the future for its continued survival and promise of fulfillment. The present moment is a mortal threat to this story-based identity. Why? Because the now is non-conceptual. You cannot think the present moment. You can only feel it. When you bring your full attention to the sensation of your breath entering your body, or to the feeling of warmth in your hands, or to the sound of rain against a window, the thinking mind falls silent. In the stark sensory reality of the present, the ego's problems, which are always about something that happened or something that might happen, lose their substance. They are revealed to be mental projections, ghosts with no real power. The anxiety about tomorrow's meeting cannot exist when your entire being is focused on the feeling of water on your skin. The regret about yesterday's argument dissolves when you are completely absorbed in the taste of a piece of fruit. The present moment is the ego's kryptonite, and so the mind, in a desperate act of self-preservation, constantly pulls us away from this threateningly peaceful space, back into the familiar, problem-filled territory of psychological time. This constant escape comes at an immense cost, for it is only in the present moment that life can be found. The past is a memory, a thought form occurring now. The future is a projection, a thought form also occurring now. When you remember your childhood, you are not in the past. The memory is an event happening in your mind in this moment. When you worry about next week, you are not in the future. The worry is a mental and emotional event happening right now. Life has never happened in the past or in the future. It has only ever happened and can only ever happen in the now. We chase after happiness as if it were a destination we might one day reach, a prize we will be awarded for all our striving. We tell ourselves, I will be happy when I get that promotion. I will find peace when I retire. I will be content when I find the right partner. But this is a fundamental error. We are looking for life in the graveyard of the past or the mirage of the future. Peace, joy, aliveness, and love are not conditions to be achieved in time. They are qualities of presence. They are the fragrance of a mind that has come home to the now. You cannot find the warmth of the sun by studying maps of yesterday's weather or by reading forecasts for tomorrow. You can only find it by stepping outside, right now, and turning your face toward the sky. How then do we come home? How do we practice this art of arriving in the only place where our life exists? The gateway is through the body, through the senses. The mind deals in the abstractions of time, but the body exists only and always in the present moment. To return to the now, you must learn to consciously inhabit your body. We use what are called anchors to tether our wandering awareness to the reality of the here and now. The most fundamental anchor is your breath. It is always with you, a rhythmic, reliable tide, constantly flowing in and out. You do not need to change it or control it. Simply feel the sensation of one full inhalation and one full exhalation. That is all. In that one breath, you have left the world of thought and entered the world of being. Another powerful anchor is the feeling of your inner body. Can you feel the subtle field of aliveness that pervades your hands, your feet, your entire body? It is a quiet, tingling vibration. Directing your attention there brings you instantly out of your head and into the present. Your senses are also portals to the now. Take a moment to simply listen. What can you hear without putting a label on it? Hear the hum of a machine, the distant traffic, the silence between the sounds. You can look at an object in front of you, a simple flower or a cup, and see it as if for the first time, without the filter of the word flower or cup, just observing its color, its shape, its texture. This is a practice of returning over and over again. Your mind will wander. That is its nature. It will pull you back into thought 1,000 times a day. The practice is not to feel frustrated or to judge yourself for this. The practice is in the gentle and compassionate act of noticing that you have wandered, and then, without any drama, kindly guiding your attention back to your anchor. Each time you do this, you are strengthening a new neural pathway. You are weakening the grip of the compulsive thinking mind and building the muscle of presence. Each return is a victory. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly encapsulates this principle. A layman, a busy and important official, came to visit a renowned Zen master. He asked the master, "What is the secret of your practice? What is the esoteric teaching that leads to your great peace and clarity?" The master looked at him and replied, "My secret is this: when I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The official was offended, feeling that the master was mocking him. "This is no secret," he said. "Everyone does that. I eat, I sleep. What is the difference?" The master smiled gently. "The difference is this," he said. "When you eat, you are not just eating. You are thinking of the 1,000 things you have to do. You are worrying about your business. You are planning your next move. When you sleep, you are not just sleeping. You are caught in dreams and anxieties. Your body is in bed, but your mind is elsewhere. When I eat, I just eat. My entire being is focused on the act of eating. When I sleep, I just sleep. There is nothing else. This is the whole of my practice." This story reveals that the spiritual life is not about doing extraordinary things, but about doing ordinary things with extraordinary presence. The sacred is not found in a distant temple, but in the heart of this very moment, in the simple act of being fully where you are. As we go deeper into this practice, we discover something even more profound. The present moment that we access through our senses is actually a doorway to something beyond time. The now that Zen speaks of is not just the tiny, fleeting sliver of time between a past that is gone and a future that has not yet come. That is still a concept of the mind, a way of measuring time. The true now is a dimension of reality that is timeless. It is the eternal, unchanging background of awareness against which the entire movie of time unfolds. It is the stillness that holds all movement, the silence that holds all sound. It is your essential nature. Each time you drop out of the stream of compulsive thinking and into the simple presence of this moment, you are piercing the veil of psychological time and tasting the infinite. You are reconnecting with the source. This is why the practice is so deeply healing and transformative. It is not merely a technique for stress reduction. It is the path of returning to who you truly are, a being not defined by the fleeting story of your life, but by the timeless presence of consciousness itself. To make this our lived reality, we need a reliable, systematic practice to train this muscle of attention. We need an anchor we can return to again and again, a friend that is always with us. For this, we now turn to the most fundamental and revered of all Zen practices, the simple, powerful art of watching the breath. We have arrived at the very heart of the practice. We have seen that our power resides not in the past or the future, but in the fertile ground of the present moment. We understand that this ground is the only place where we can plant the seeds of a more peaceful and meaningful life. And yet, we know intimately how difficult it is to remain here. The monkey mind, with its ceaseless chatter and time-traveling habits, constantly pulls us away, leaving us feeling scattered and disconnected. To make our home in the now, to become a skilled gardener of the mind, we need more than just an intellectual understanding. We need a tool. We need a practice. We need an anchor that can hold us steady amidst the turbulent currents of our own thoughts. The wisdom of Zen, inherited directly from the Buddha himself, offers us such an anchor. It is the most simple, most profound, and most accessible tool available to any human being. It is your own breath. The practice of cultivating this connection is called anapanasati, which translates simply as mindfulness of breathing. This practice is the foundation stone upon which the entire palace of awakening is built. It is the master key that unlocks the door to inner peace. Why the breath? Why is this simple biological process held in such high esteem? The breath is the perfect teacher for several profound reasons. First, it is universally available. It requires no special equipment, no particular belief system, no guru, no temple. It is with you from the moment you are born until the moment you die. It is the most democratic of all spiritual tools. Second, the breath is always in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past. You cannot take a breath that is in the future. To be aware of your breath is, by definition, to be aware of the now. It is a direct, experiential antidote to the time-traveling mind. When you are fully with one inhalation, you are fully present. Third, the breath is a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, the voluntary and the involuntary. You can consciously choose to hold your breath or change its rhythm, yet most of the day it happens on its own, a mysterious, life-sustaining process. By watching it, we become intimate with the deeper, more subtle energies of our own being. Finally, the breath is constantly changing. It is sometimes deep and long, sometimes short and shallow. It is a dynamic, living process. This subtle dance holds our attention and teaches us, in a very direct way, about the nature of impermanence. The breath is your most intimate companion on this journey, a teacher who asks for nothing but your quiet attention. So, how do we practice? The beauty of Anapanasati lies in its simplicity. Find a comfortable place to sit. You can sit on a cushion on the floor, or you can sit upright in a chair. The important thing is that your back is relatively straight, but not stiff. This posture embodies a sense of dignity and wakefulness. Allow your hands to rest easily in your lap or on your knees. Gently close your eyes, or if you prefer, leave them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze toward the floor. Now, bring your attention to the sensation of breathing. That is the entire instruction. There is nothing to fix, nothing to achieve. Simply notice the feeling of the breath as it enters and leaves your body. To help focus your mind, you might choose to rest your attention on one specific spot where the sensation is most clear to you. For some, this is the tip of the nostrils, feeling the cool air entering and the warm air leaving. For others, it is the rise and fall of the chest, or the gentle expansion and contraction of the abdomen. Choose one spot and let your attention rest there, like a butterfly resting on a flower. Here we must be very clear about a crucial point. We are not doing a breathing exercise. We are practicing breathing awareness. The goal is not to control the breath, not to make it deeper or slower or more spiritual. The goal is to let the breath be exactly as it is, and to simply watch it without interference. You are the impartial scientist, the curious observer, watching this natural, rhythmic process unfold. Moment by moment, feel the beginning of the in-breath, experience its full duration, and notice the slight pause before the out-breath begins. Feel the entire journey of the out-breath, all the way to its end, and notice the stillness before the next breath arises, naturally. Now, for the most important instruction of all. As you do this, your mind will wander. This is not a guess. It is a guarantee. After a few breaths, or maybe just one, you will find yourself lost in a thought. You will be planning, remembering, worrying, or fantasizing. You will have forgotten all about the breath. The moment you realize this, the moment you wake up from the dream of thought, is the most sacred moment of the practice. This is not a mistake. It is not a sign that you are a bad meditator. It is simply what minds do. The practice is not about never wandering. The practice is the act of returning. When you notice your mind has wandered, gently acknowledge where it has been, perhaps with a soft mental note like thinking or planning. Then, with infinite kindness and patience, as if you were guiding a lost puppy back home, gently escort your attention back to the sensation of the breath. You will have to do this 100 times. You may have to do it 1,000 times. It does not matter. The act of returning, gently and without judgment, is the practice itself. Each return is a rep, a bicep curl for the muscle of your attention. There is a wonderful Zen parable that illustrates this process of taming the mind. It is called the 10 ox herding pictures. In the beginning, the ox, which represents our wild, untamed mind, is running rampant. It is powerful, chaotic, and destructive, trampling the rice fields of our peace. The farmer, the meditator, resolves to tame it. At first, he can't even find the ox. He only sees its tracks, the evidence of his scattered thoughts. Then, he gets a glimpse of it. He gets a rope, which represents mindfulness, and specifically, the practice of anapanasati. The initial struggle is immense. The ox is strong and pulls violently in every direction. The mind fights back against the discipline of returning to the breath. It is a great battle, requiring immense persistence. The farmer must also use a goad, representing wise effort and wisdom, to keep the ox on the path. Slowly, gradually, through this consistent, patient effort, the ox begins to yield. It becomes accustomed to the rope. It fights less. The farmer can walk alongside it. Over time, the ox becomes so tame that it follows the farmer willingly, without any need for the rope or the goad. Finally, the farmer and the ox rest peacefully together, the farmer playing a flute in the evening light. The mind, once a source of chaos, has become a trusted friend, a source of power and serene joy. This story reminds us that meditation is a gradual process of taming, not a battle to be won overnight. It requires our patience, our persistence, and above all, our compassion for ourselves. What are the fruits of this patient practice? They arise not because we are grasping for them, but as the natural consequence of tending to our minds. The most immediate benefit is a sense of calm. By focusing on the gentle rhythm of the breath, we activate the body's relaxation response, calming the nervous system and easing the chronic stress that so many of us carry. As we strengthen the muscle of attention, we find our ability to focus improves in all areas of our lives. The mental fog begins to clear, replaced by a sense of sharpness and clarity. But the most profound fruit of this practice is the creation of inner space. In our normal, unexamined lives, there is no space between a stimulus and our reaction to it. Someone says something critical, and anger flares instantly. An anxious thought arises, and panic immediately follows. Through the practice of returning to the breath, we create a pause. In that pause, in that sacred space between stimulus and response, we find our freedom. An upsetting event may still occur, but we now have a choice in how we respond. We can choose to not feed the anger. We can choose to not believe the anxious thought. This space is the birthplace of wisdom and compassion. This simple, profound practice of mindfulness of breathing is the tool that cleans the lens of our perception. It stabilizes the mind, transforming it from a turbulent storm into a clear, still lake. When the water is still, it can reflect the moon and the stars perfectly. And so, once our mind has found a measure of stability and clarity, we are ready to look through that newly polished lens more deeply into the nature of reality. To do this, we need not only a steady mind, but also the proper attitude, an attitude of profound openness and curiosity. We must learn to see the world not through the tired eyes of our past knowledge, but with the fresh, wide-open eyes of a beginner. With a method in hand to quiet the restless mind, we begin to find moments of stillness. The practice of watching the breath, of anapanasati, acts like a gentle hand, calming the turbulent waters of our thoughts. As the mud of our anxiety and distraction begins to settle, the water of the mind gains a new clarity. But a clear and stable mind is not the final destination of this path. It is the necessary starting point. It is the preparation of the laboratory for a great experiment. Now that we have a steady instrument, we must learn how to use it. We must cultivate the proper attitude for looking deeply into the nature of reality. And here we encounter a profound paradox. The greatest obstacle to discovering the truth is not our ignorance, but our illusion of knowledge. The mind that is already full has no room for anything new. To truly see, we must be willing to unlearn everything we think we know. We must be willing to become, once again, a beginner. In the tradition of Zen, this fundamental attitude is known as Shoshin, which translates as beginner's mind. It is a state of being that is open, eager, curious, and completely free from the burden of preconceived notions. It is the mind of a young child who looks at the world with wide-eyed wonder, for whom everything is new and miraculous. A child does not look at a crawling insect and think, "That is merely a coleoptera from the family Carabidae." A child simply sees the intricate legs, the shimmering shell, the mysterious movement, and is utterly captivated. There is no filter of past knowledge, no label, no judgment. There is only direct, intimate, and joyful experience. This is beginner's mind. The opposite of this is what we might call the expert's mind. This is the mind that most of us inhabit as adults. The expert's mind is a full cup. It is filled to the brim with facts, with opinions, with past experiences, with hard-earned conclusions. It is quick to categorize, to analyze, and to judge. When it encounters a new person, a new idea, or a new experience, its first impulse is to file it away into an existing mental box. It says, "Oh, I've seen this before," or "This is just like that other thing," or "I already know how this will turn out." The expert's mind is heavy, rigid, and closed. While it possesses a great deal of information, it has very little capacity for true insight. It is so full of its own conclusions that it cannot see the reality that is right in front of it. It sees only its own reflection. Beginner's mind, on the other hand, is an empty cup. It is light, flexible, and open. It does not carry the burden of needing to be right. Its only desire is to see, to understand, to experience directly. In the beginner's mind, as the Zen master Shunryu Suzuki said, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. There is a famous Zen story that illustrates this principle perfectly. A highly respected university professor, a man who had dedicated his life to studying various spiritual philosophies, traveled a great distance to visit a reclusive Zen master. He wanted to inquire about the nature of Zen. Upon being welcomed into the master's simple hut, the professor immediately began to speak. He spoke at length about all the books he had read, about the connections he had made between different schools of thought, about his own complex theories and interpretations. The Zen master listened patiently and politely. After some time, the master said, "Let us have some tea." He began to prepare the tea with quiet, deliberate movements. When it was ready, he took the professor's cup and began to pour. He filled the cup to the brim, but he did not stop. The hot tea began to overflow, spilling onto the saucer and then onto the table. The professor watched in astonishment and then cried out, "Stop! The cup is already full. No more will go in." The Zen master stopped pouring, looked calmly at the professor, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story is a teaching for all of us. How can we receive anything new if our hands are already full? How can we truly listen if we are already busy formulating our response? To cultivate Shoshin is to practice the art of emptying our cup, moment by moment. This is not just an attitude for the meditation cushion. It is a way of transforming our entire life. Think about your conversations. How often do we truly listen to another person, especially someone we know well, like a spouse or a close friend? Often, we are listening through a thick filter of our history with them, of our expectations and judgments. We think we already know what they are going to say. To listen with beginner's mind is to set all of that aside. It is to offer the other person the gift of an empty cup, to listen with a genuine curiosity, as if you have never heard them before. In that open space, true communication and connection can finally happen. We can apply this to the most mundane activities. Consider the act of eating. Most of us eat on autopilot. Our minds a million miles away. What would it be like to eat a single strawberry with beginner's mind? Instead of just popping it in your mouth while thinking about something else, you could first take a moment to truly look at it. Notice its vibrant, improbable redness, the tiny seeds dotting its surface, the fresh green of its cap. You could feel its texture, smell its unique fragrance. Then, when you take a bite, you could close your eyes and let the explosion of sweet and tart flavors command your full attention. To eat in this way is to transform a mundane act into a moment of rich, sensual pleasure and profound presence. Or consider walking a path you take every day. The expert's mind finds it boring and sees nothing. The beginner's mind is on a treasure hunt. It notices the way the sunlight filters through the leaves in a pattern that has never existed before and will never exist again. It sees a new wildflower pushing its way through a crack in the sidewalk. It hears the specific song of a bird. By letting go of our assumption of familiarity, the entire world becomes alive, vibrant, and endlessly interesting. The miraculous is not hidden in some faraway land. It is right here, concealed only by the veil of our own boredom. Shoshin is the practice of lifting that veil. On a deeper level, this practice helps us to see beyond our own mental concepts and make direct contact with reality. The expert mind does not see the world. It sees its own labels. When we look at the sky, we think the word sky, and our mind moves on. When we see a bird, we think the label bird, and the experience is over. We are living in a world of second-hand concepts, not first-hand experience. Beginner's mind is the desire to see the thing in itself. It is to look at the sky and see the boundless, ever-changing expanse of blue without the word. It is to look at a tree and see the rough texture of the bark, the intricate network of its branches, the gentle rustle of its leaves, without the limiting concept of tree. This is the heart of Zen, seeing, to experience life directly, without the mediation of our own thinking mind. To cultivate Shoshin is to embrace the joy and freedom of not knowing. The expert is trapped, burdened by the need to maintain their status, to always have the answer. The beginner is free to ask silly questions, free to make mistakes, free to be surprised, to be awed, to be delighted. When we let go of the need to know, we open ourselves up to the possibility of genuine discovery. the entire universe becomes our teacher, and every person, every situation, every challenge becomes an opportunity to learn something new. Our cup is empty, ready to receive the endless wonders of life. This open, curious, and non-judgmental attitude is the perfect state of mind with which to approach the great truths of existence. Now that we have polished the lens of our perception with mindfulness and emptied our cup with the spirit of a beginner, we are ready. We are ready to turn our clear and open gaze toward one of the most fundamental, challenging, and ultimately liberating realities of all, the universal truth that nothing ever stays the same. With our minds stabilized by the breath and our hearts opened by the spirit of a beginner, we are now prepared to gaze directly at one of the most fundamental laws of the universe. It is a truth so pervasive that we often fail to see it, like a fish that is unaware of the water in which it swims. It is the simple, absolute, and inescapable reality that everything changes. Nothing is permanent. Nothing stays the same. In the language of this path, this universal law is known as anicca, or impermanence. From the colossal, slow-burning life of a distant star to the fleeting, electric spark of a single thought, everything in existence is in a constant state of flux. The mountains we perceive as symbols of eternity are being relentlessly worn down by wind and rain. The solid ground beneath our feet is a tectonic plate drifting on a sea of molten rock. Your own body, which feels so solid and familiar, is a bustling metropolis of cells, being born and dying in every moment. Your emotions, your thoughts, your relationships, your worldly success, your deepest sorrows, all of it is arising, abiding for a time, and passing away. This is not a theory or a philosophy. It is the primary, observable fact of existence. Deep down, we all know this to be true. We see the seasons turn. We watch our children grow. We see the lines deepen on our own faces. And yet, we structure our entire lives as if it were a lie. We operate from a deep-seated, unspoken assumption of permanence. We build our emotional homes on the shifting sands of temporary states, and then feel shocked and betrayed when the tide inevitably comes in. The primary source of our deep dissatisfaction, our dukkha, is born from this fundamental conflict. It is the friction generated between our desperate desire for things to stay the same and the universe's resolute insistence on constant change. We fall in love and cling to the initial, blissful phase of a relationship, resisting its natural evolution and creating suffering when it inevitably changes. We achieve a moment of success or happiness and immediately try to grasp it, to make it a permanent feature of our lives, only to feel a sense of loss and failure when it passes. We cling to our youth, our health, our identities, fighting a constant, losing battle against the relentless current of time. We are like a person trying to build a solid fortress on the bank of a powerful river. We exhaust ourselves, piling up stones of attachment and cementing them with the mortar of denial, all while the river of life continues its ceaseless, powerful flow, gently but surely, eroding the very ground on which we stand. There is a timeless Taoist parable that beautifully illustrates the folly of our attempts to label and solidify the ever-changing nature of reality. A wise old farmer lived in a small village. His most prized possession was a beautiful horse. One day, the horse broke through its fence and ran away. The farmer's neighbors all came to console him. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A week later, the horse returned, and it was not alone. It led a herd of 12 wild horses back into the farmer's corral. The neighbors gathered again, this time to congratulate him. "What wonderful luck!" they exclaimed. The farmer calmly replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses. He was thrown from its back and suffered a badly broken leg. The neighbors rushed over, shaking their heads. "What awful luck," they lamented. The farmer just looked at them and said, "Maybe." A few weeks passed, and the emperor's army marched into the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a brutal war from which few were expected to return. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was the only young man in the village to be spared. The neighbors, overwhelmed with awe, said to the farmer, "You were right all along. It was the greatest luck of all." The farmer, gazing at his son resting peacefully, simply replied, "Maybe." This story teaches us the wisdom of suspending judgment in the face of an ever-changing reality. We cannot know whether an event is ultimately good or bad because we cannot see the whole picture. The situation is always evolving. What appears to be a disaster today might be the seed of a great blessing tomorrow. What looks like a great victory might lead to unforeseen difficulties. Anicca teaches us humility. It invites us to let go of our rigid conclusions and to meet life with a more open and spacious curiosity. To contemplate impermanence is not, as it might first seem, an exercise in pessimism or nihilism. It is the opposite. It is the key to unlocking a profound and vibrant appreciation for life. It is the very fact that things do not last that makes them so precious. Would we cherish the warmth of our loved ones so deeply if we believed they would be with us for all eternity? Would the fleeting beauty of a cherry blossom in spring or the spectacular blaze of a sunset move us to such a state of awe if it were a permanent fixture in the sky? The knowledge that this moment, this conversation, this meal, this breath will never come again in exactly the same way is a powerful call to awaken. It urges us to pay attention, to show up fully for our own lives. It transforms the mundane into the sacred. When you understand Anicca, you realize that every moment is a once-in-a-lifetime event. This is not a morbid thought. It is a life-affirming one. It is the secret ingredient that gives life its poignancy, its beauty, and its depth. This same law also offers an incredible gift of hope during our most difficult times. When we are caught in the grip of intense pain, whether it is physical illness, deep grief, or profound despair, our suffering is often compounded by a terrifying thought: this will last forever. The pain feels solid, monolithic, and eternal. It feels like a permanent state of being from which there is no escape. The wisdom of Anicca is a lifeline in these dark waters. It is the quiet, steady voice that reminds us, this, too, shall pass. The intense storm of anger will eventually blow itself out. The heavy fog of sadness will, in time, begin to lift. The seemingly insurmountable problem will evolve, change, and become something else. This does not mean we deny or suppress the pain of the present. We feel it fully, but we hold it within a larger context of spacious awareness, knowing that it is a temporary weather pattern, not the sky itself. This knowledge removes the second arrow of suffering, the suffering we add to our pain by believing it will be our reality forever. It gives us the strength to endure, to have faith in the ceaseless unfolding of life. Ultimately, accepting the truth of impermanence is about learning to dance. The river of life is always flowing, always changing. We can spend our lives on the riverbank, trying to fight the current, trying to direct it, trying to hold on to the water as it slips through our fingers. This is a life of struggle, frustration, and exhaustion. Or we can choose to get in the river. We can learn to let go of our rigid attachment to how we think things should be and begin to move with how they are. This doesn't mean being passive or resigned. A skilled kayaker doesn't just let the river carry them wherever it pleases. They are active, alert, and responsive. They use their skill and awareness to navigate the currents, to dance with the energy of the water. To live with the wisdom of Anika is to become such a dancer. It is to cultivate a mind that is flexible, adaptable, and resilient. It is to meet each new bend in the river, not with fear and resistance, but with a sense of open, responsive curiosity. This is the essence of true freedom. It is not found in controlling life, but in participating in it fully, gracefully, and without reservation. We have now looked at reality through the clear lens of a beginner's mind and seen two fundamental truths. We have seen anatta, the truth that there is no fixed, permanent, separate self. And we have now seen anicca, the truth that everything in the universe is in a state of constant, relentless change. A profound question now arises. What happens when we put these two truths together? What is the nature of a reality in which an ever-changing, flowing process that we call life is experienced by an ever-changing, flowing process that we call a self? To explore this is to venture into the very heart of Zen wisdom, to a concept that is both subtle and deeply liberating. It is to explore the idea that everything, because it is impermanent and dependent on everything else, is ultimately empty of a solid, independent existence. Our journey inward has brought us to a remarkable place. With the quiet mind of a beginner, we have looked at our own experience and have seen two profound truths. We have seen anatta, the truth that there is no solid separate self to be found within us. We are a flowing river of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. We have also seen anicca, the truth that the entire universe, from the grandest galaxy to the smallest particle, is in a state of constant, ceaseless change. The river of the self is flowing through a world that is also a river. A powerful question now emerges from the confluence of these two streams. What is the nature of a reality where impermanent processes are constantly interacting with other impermanent processes? To answer this is to touch the very heart of Zen wisdom, to approach a concept that is at once the most subtle and the most liberating. This concept is called sunyata, or emptiness. Now, we must approach this word with great care. In the English language, emptiness carries a heavy weight of something negative. It suggests a void, a vacuum, a barren nothingness, a lack. It can sound cold, nihilistic, and even frightening. It is absolutely crucial to understand that this is not what sunyata means. In the Buddhist sense, emptiness is not the absence of everything. It is the absence of one specific thing, a separate, independent, self-contained existence. Nothing in the entire cosmos exists on its own, from its own side, isolated from everything else. Everything is radically interconnected. Everything arises in dependence upon everything else. It is not that things are empty, but that they are empty of a separate self. This is a subtle but world-changing distinction. To make this clear, let us look deeply at a single flower. Let us hold the image of a beautiful rose in our minds. It seems to be a distinct object. It has a name, a color, a fragrance. It seems to be a self-contained thing. But now, let us practice the Zen art of looking deeply. Let us look into the rose and see what it is truly made of. Do we see the sunshine? The brilliant light of the sun, millions of miles away, is in the rose. Without the sun's energy, the rose could not have grown, So the sun, which is not the rose, is a part of the rose. Do we see a cloud? The cloud, which is not the rose, brought the rain. Without the water from that cloud, the rose would have withered and died. So the cloud is in the rose. Do we see the earth, the soil, the minerals, the rich humus, none of which are the rose, are all present in its stem and petals? Do we see the farmer who planted the seed? Do we see the generations of ancestors who taught that farmer how to cultivate plants? Do we see the miners who forged the steel for the farmer's spade? When we look deeply enough, we see that the entire universe is present in this single flower. The flower is made entirely of non-flower elements. It has no separate, independent existence. It is empty of a private self. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh coined a beautiful word for this reality, into being. The flower does not just exist, it is with the sun, the cloud, the earth, and the whole of space and time. Now, let us turn that same deep looking upon ourselves. We feel so strongly that we are a separate me. But what is this me made of? Look deeply. Do you see your parents? Their DNA is your DNA. Their joys and sorrows, their strengths and weaknesses are woven into the fabric of your being. You are with your entire family lineage. Look at the food you ate for breakfast. In you, there is the grain, and therefore the field where it grew, the sun and the rain that nourished it, the baker who made the bread. You are with the entire earth. Feel the air entering your lungs with your next breath. This air, this oxygen, was gifted to you by countless trees and plankton. You are with the entire atmosphere of the planet. Think of the language you are using to understand these words. This language was created by millions of people over thousands of years. You interlace with the whole of human culture. When we look deeply, the solid line we draw between me and the rest of the universe becomes blurry, and then it dissolves completely. Just like the flower, we are empty of a separate self. We are a nexus point, a unique and temporary gathering of the entire cosmos. The intellectual understanding of this is one thing, but the visceral feeling of it is profoundly healing. The deepest wound of the human condition is the feeling of loneliness, of being a fragile, isolated fragment in a vast, indifferent universe. The feeling of separation is the source of our deepest fears. Sunyata is the medicine that heals this wound. When you realize that you intertwine with everything, how can you ever feel truly alone? You carry the entire universe within you. The boundary between self and other is revealed to be a mental construct, an illusion. This realization is the logical and unshakable foundation for compassion. If you and I are not fundamentally separate, then your suffering is my suffering, and my happiness is your happiness. Harming another being becomes as nonsensical as having your left hand intentionally injure your right hand. It is a form of self-harm. When we pollute the air, we are not polluting some external environment. We are poisoning the very air that we ourselves must breathe. The distinction between selfishness and altruism collapses. Looking after others becomes the most intelligent form of looking after ourselves. Compassion is no longer a burdensome moral duty, but the spontaneous, joyful, and logical expression of wisdom. Ancient Buddhist cosmology offers a breathtaking image to help us visualize this truth of interbeing. It is the image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast cosmic net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. It is a web of unfathomable size and complexity, and at every single node, at every point where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, brilliant, perfectly polished jewel. Each jewel is multifaceted, sparkling with light. The most miraculous quality of this net is that if you were to look closely into the polished surface of any one of these jewels, you would see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire, infinite net. Not only that, but each reflection within that single jewel also contains all the other reflections, and so on, to infinity. The whole is present in every part. Every part contains and reflects the whole. This is the universe. You are one of those jewels. Your existence reflects and is reflected by every other being, every other event in the entire cosmos. Finally, emptiness, or sunyata, is not a dead end of nothingness, but the ultimate source of potential and freedom. If things were solid, fixed, and possessed a permanent, independent self, then nothing could ever change. A seed, if it possessed a solid seed nature, could never become a tree. An acorn could never become an oak. A caterpillar could never transform into a butterfly. A person who made a mistake could never learn, grow, and become wiser. It is precisely because everything is empty of a fixed, inherent nature that all things are possible. Change, growth, learning, healing, and transformation can only happen in a universe that is fundamentally empty in this way. Emptiness is not a vacuum. It is a womb. It is the fertile, open space of pure potentiality from which all forms arise, dance for a while, and into which they eventually dissolve. It is the ultimate ground of being, which allows for the infinite creativity and dynamism of life. Our journey has taken us from the turbulence of the individual mind to the vast, silent, and interconnected web of all existence. We have followed the threads of no self and impermanence, and they have led us here to the understanding that we are not separate drops, but the entire ocean, expressing itself for a time as a unique wave. This is not a concept to be merely understood with the intellect. It is a reality to be felt in the heart. When the mind truly begins to grasp the truth of our radical interconnectedness, the heart cannot help but respond. The logical next step on our path, the natural flowering of this profound wisdom, is the cultivation of a boundless and unconditional love for all beings, who we now understand are not separate from ourselves. We must now explore the radiant heart of this wisdom, the practice of compassion. The journey of wisdom has led us to a breathtaking vista. From the high mountain pass of Sunyata, we have looked out upon the landscape of reality and seen not a world of separate, isolated fragments, but a vast, interconnected web of being. We have seen that the flower inter is with the sun and the cloud, and that we inter are with the breath, the earth, and each other. The illusion of a solid, separate self has dissolved, revealing our true nature as a unique expression of the entire cosmos. An intellectual understanding of this is a profound achievement, but Zen is not a path of the intellect alone. It is a path of the whole being. When the mind sees a truth so fundamental, the heart must respond. Wisdom, or prajna, is like one wing of a great bird. It provides insight and clarity, but for the bird to fly, it needs another wing, a wing of equal strength and size. That second wing is karuna, or compassion. Wisdom sees our interconnectedness. Compassion is the feeling of that interconnectedness. Together, they are what allow us to soar. What is compassion? In our everyday language, we often confuse it with pity or sentimentality. Pity looks down from above. It reinforces a sense of separation. Oh, that poor person. I am so glad I am not them. Sentimentality is a shallow, emotional reaction that is more about our own feelings than the other's suffering. Karuna is something else entirely. It is a deep, resonant trembling of the heart in the presence of suffering. The word itself suggests this. It is not feeling for someone, but feeling with them. It is the courageous willingness to step into the reality of another's pain, to acknowledge it without flinching, and to hold it with a deep and active wish for that suffering to be eased. It is the natural, energetic response of a heart that understands there is no fundamental separation between me and you. It is the wisdom of emptiness made manifest as love. Like any profound skill of the heart, compassion must be cultivated, and the ground in which we must first plant its seeds is the soil of our own being. We must learn to practice self-compassion. For many of us, especially in a culture that prizes strength and relentless self-improvement, this is the most difficult step. Our inner landscape is often ruled by a harsh inner critic, a judgmental voice that constantly reminds us of our failings and imperfections. We treat ourselves with a severity that we would never dream of inflicting upon a friend. We try to pour compassion for others from a vessel that is itself cracked and empty. The path of karuna insists that we begin by turning that gentle attention inward. It is the practice of learning to meet our own pain, our own failures, our own monkey mind with kindness. When you feel anxious or afraid, instead of criticizing yourself for your weakness, you can place a hand on your own heart and silently offer yourself the same words you might offer a frightened child. This is a moment of suffering. It is okay to feel this way. May I be kind to myself. This is not an act of self-indulgence. It is an act of courage. It is creating a foundation of inner safety and warmth. Shame and self-criticism are paralyzing forces. They lock us into cycles of negativity. Self-compassion is what gives us the strength and the resilience to truly grow and to change. Once we have begun to touch this source of kindness within ourselves, we can begin to extend it outward in ever-widening circles. This is a systematic training of the heart. We begin with someone for whom it is easy to feel love and kindness, a dear friend, a beloved family member, perhaps even a pet. We bring their image to mind, and we sincerely cultivate the wish. May you be free from suffering. May you be at peace. We let our heart resonate with that genuine wish. After a time, we move to the next circle. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see often but have no strong feelings about, like a cashier at a grocery store or a person we pass on the street. We then extend the very same wish to them. May you be free from suffering. May you be at peace. In doing this, we begin to break down the walls of our indifference. We start to recognize the shared humanity in those we might otherwise ignore. Then comes the most challenging, and therefore the most transformative, stage of the practice. We are invited to bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict, someone who has hurt us. The practice here is subtle and requires great wisdom. It is not about condoning their harmful actions or forcing ourselves to forgive and forget. It is about looking deeper. It is about understanding the fundamental principle that happy, peaceful people do not cause harm. Harmful actions are almost always born from a person's own inner suffering, their own greed, their own fear, their own confusion and pain. To wish for a difficult person to be free from suffering is a radical act. It is to wish for them to be free from the very causes and conditions that make them act in harmful ways. This practice is not really for them, it is for us. It is what frees us from the corrosive prison of our own hatred and resentment, allowing us to move through the world with a heart that is unburdened and open. The life of the Buddha provides the ultimate illustration of this principle in action. His own cousin, a monk named Devadatta, was consumed by jealousy and ambition. He became the Buddha's nemesis, repeatedly trying to usurp his position and even to assassinate him. On one occasion, Devadatta arranged for a notoriously fierce, wild elephant named Nalagiri to be intoxicated with alcohol and then unleashed onto the narrow street where the Buddha was walking. As the enraged elephant charged, screaming and destroying everything in its path, panic erupted. The Buddha's disciples urged him to flee, but he remained perfectly calm, his posture serene and unshakable. Instead of fear or anger, he looked at the charging beast and radiated a powerful, unwavering energy of loving kindness and compassion. The elephant, a creature of pure instinct, was completely arrested by this energy. Its rage subsided, it slowed to a walk, and it approached the Buddha and knelt before him, allowing the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. The Buddha never saw Devadatta as a villain to be vanquished. He consistently saw him as a deeply unhappy, suffering being, caught in the snares of his own deluded mind. His response was never hatred, but an unshakable compassion that recognized the suffering behind the harmful actions. This story reveals that true compassion, karuna, is not a passive or weak emotion. It is not about simply feeling sad about the state of the world. It is a source of immense strength and fearlessness. It is a powerful motivating force for action. When we truly understand that the suffering of others is not separate from our own, we are naturally moved to act. Compassion becomes the engine of our engagement with the world. It manifests as a kind word to someone who is struggling, a listening ear offered without judgment, a helping hand to someone in need. It can also fuel our work for social and environmental justice, as we recognize that systemic suffering is also a form of suffering that we are called to alleviate. Karuna is the heart's intelligent and energetic response to the pain it perceives in the world. It is the active side of love. We have seen that wisdom and compassion are the two wings of awakening. Our journey into the heart of reality has shown us our deep connection to all beings, and this insight naturally opens our hearts in compassion to their sorrows. But a truly balanced heart does not only resonate with pain, it must also be able to resonate with joy. What happens when we see good fortune come to others? Do we feel a pang of jealousy, or can we share in their happiness? To complete the training of the heart, we must learn to cultivate the radiant quality that is the twin sister of compassion. We must learn to feel joy in the joy of others. The path of wisdom and the path of the heart are one and the same. As our understanding of our profound interconnectedness deepens, our hearts naturally begin to open. We have seen how the wisdom of sunyata gives birth to karuna, a boundless compassion that trembles in the presence of suffering and wishes for it to be healed. This is the heart's response to the world's pain. It is a vital, necessary, and beautiful quality, but a heart that is truly whole and balanced cannot only be open to sorrow, it must also be open to joy. What is our first instinctive reaction when we hear of another's good fortune? What happens within us when a colleague receives the promotion we wanted, when a friend achieves a long-held dream, or when we see images of someone else's perfect vacation or happy family? If we are truly honest with ourselves, we might notice a subtle tightening in the chest, a sour taste in the mouth, a quiet voice that whispers, "Why them and not me?" This is the painful, corrosive poison of envy and jealousy. It is a universal human affliction, a source of immense hidden suffering, and a powerful obstacle to our own happiness. To understand how to heal this affliction, we must first diagnose its root cause. Envy is born directly from the illusion of the separate self. The ego, that small, constricted sense of me, lives in a state of perpetual lack. It sees the world through the lens of scarcity. It believes that happiness, success, love, and recognition are all limited resources, like slices of a single pie. From this perspective, life is a zero-sum game. If someone else gets a large slice of the pie, it logically means there is less available for me. Their success becomes a direct commentary on my failure. Their happiness highlights my own lack. This mindset of comparison is a formula for perpetual misery. It chains us to a hamster wheel of striving and resentment, and it poisons our relationships, preventing us from ever truly celebrating the lives of those around us. Envy is a lonely prison of our own making, and the only person it ever truly harms is the prisoner. The antidote to this poison, the key that unlocks this prison, is a radiant quality of the heart, known in the Zen tradition as mudita. Mudita can be translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the genuine, unselfish happiness that we feel for the good fortune of others. It is the heart's capacity to celebrate the success, the happiness, and the virtue of another being as if it were our own. If envy is the bitter fruit of the scarcity mindset, mudita is the sweet fruit of the wisdom of interbeing. It comes from the deep understanding that reality is not a small, finite pie. It is an infinite, ever-expanding feast of joy and possibility. The happiness of another does not subtract from the world's total supply. It adds to it. And because we, in turn, are with all beings, their happiness is, in a very real sense, our happiness. Their success does not diminish us. It enriches the entire web of life of which we are an inseparable part. Mudita is the heart's joyful yes to the flourishing of life wherever it appears. Like compassion, mudita is a quality that can be consciously cultivated. It is a muscle of the heart that gets stronger with practice. The training begins, as always, close to home. Bring to mind a person you love deeply, a dear friend or family member. Now, recall a recent moment of their success or happiness. Perhaps they achieved a personal goal, received some wonderful news, or were simply experiencing a moment of pure, simple joy. Instead of just feeling happy for them, try to feel their joy in your own heart. Let their smile become your smile. Let their feeling of accomplishment light up your own being. Savor that shared happiness. This is the seed of mudita. We can then extend this practice into our daily lives by making a conscious effort to notice the happiness of others. We can turn ourselves into collectors of joy. As you go about your day, actively look for small signs of it. A couple holding hands and laughing. A child completely absorbed in playful delight. A stranger smiling at their phone. Instead of letting these moments pass by unnoticed, we can pause for a fraction of a second and silently congratulate them in our minds. A simple, internal whisper of how wonderful for you. May your happiness continue. This simple practice begins to rewire our brains, training us to scan the world, not for what we lack, but for the joy that is already abundant. We can even transform the modern envy machine of social media into a powerful training ground for mudita. As you scroll through photos of weddings, new babies, beautiful travels, and professional achievements, notice the familiar pang of comparison. If it arises, acknowledge it, and then consciously choose a different path. Take a breath, look at the image, and offer a genuine wish. I am happy that you are happy. This transforms a potential source of suffering into a deliberate act of cultivating a generous and joyful heart. To understand the expansive power of mudita, consider the modern parable of a crowd at a great sporting event. Imagine you are in a stadium, surrounded by tens of thousands of people. all supporting the same team. The game is tense. In the final seconds, a player from your team scores the winning goal. What happens? A massive, spontaneous eruption of pure joy. The entire stadium is on its feet, roaring, cheering, embracing strangers. In that moment of collective ecstasy, is anyone thinking, "I'm jealous that the striker got to score the goal and I didn't"? Of course not. The thought is absurd. The joy is shared. Your own individual happiness is magnified 1,000-fold, lifted up and carried on a vast wave of the happiness of everyone around you. You are literally buoyed by the joy of others. This is mudita on a grand scale. The practice of mudita is the practice of taking this open, generous, shared spirit and carrying it from the stadium into every corner of our lives. It is the choice to be on the same team as everyone else, the team of humanity. Cultivating sympathetic joy has a profoundly transformative effect on our own well-being. It is the most direct and effective cure for the self-inflicted poisons of envy, jealousy, and resentment. These emotions only ever diminish us, making our world smaller and more bitter. Mudita, on the other hand, makes our world infinitely larger and sweeter. It dramatically expands our own capacity for happiness. If you can only be happy when good things happen to you, your opportunities for joy are, by definition, quite limited. They are scarce. But if you can learn to be happy when good things happen to anyone, your friend, your neighbor, the stranger on the bus, the person on the news, then your opportunities for joy become boundless. The entire world's good fortune becomes a source of nourishment for your own heart. This practice dissolves the lonely, isolating walls of the ego and makes us a true friend to the world. A person whose heart is filled with mudita walks through life with a quiet smile, genuinely delighted by the simple goodness and happiness they see all around them. We have now explored the heart's response to both the sorrows and the joys of the world. We have seen that the wise heart meets suffering with karuna, compassion, and it meets happiness with mudita, sympathetic joy. These are two of the four immeasurable states of mind taught in the Buddhist tradition. They are beautiful, expansive, and essential for a life of connection. However, for these qualities to be truly effective, they need a foundation of stability. If our compassion becomes so overwhelming that we are paralyzed by grief, it is not helpful. If our sympathetic joy becomes a kind of manic, ungrounded excitement, we lose our center. To be able to hold both the immense sorrow and the immense joy of the world in a single, vast, and open heart without being thrown off balance requires a third, crucial quality. We need a steady ground upon which these other qualities can stand. This is the quality of profound balance, of unshakable peace. It is the calm center in the heart of the storm. The heart, like the mind, seeks its own form of wisdom. In response to the great truths of our interconnectedness, we have explored the heart's capacity for karuna, a boundless compassion for the suffering of all beings, and mudita, a selfless and appreciative joy in their happiness. These are the radiant, outgoing energies of an awakened heart. They are expressions of a love that is no longer confined by the narrow walls of the ego. But for this love to be truly effective, for it to be sustainable and wise, it requires a foundation. A great tree with vast branches reaching for the sky also needs deep roots to hold it steady in a storm. A ship with magnificent sails also needs a heavy keel to keep it from capsizing in a mighty wind. In the spiritual life, this grounding, stabilizing force, this deep root and heavy keel is the quality of upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity is a state of profound mental balance and composure, an unshakable serenity that is not disturbed by the constant rising and falling of life's fortunes. It is, perhaps, the most misunderstood of the heart's great virtues. The word can suggest a cold indifference, a detached apathy, or a resigned stoicism. But true upekkha is not cold. It is radiantly warm. It is not a state of withdrawal or emotional suppression where we refuse to feel. It is the very opposite. It is a state of radical openness and inclusion, a willingness to feel everything completely, but without being owned by our feelings. Indifference is closing the door of the heart, saying, "I will not let this affect me." Equanimity is opening the door of the heart so wide that everything can pass through it freely, without getting stuck. It is the quiet, powerful peace that arises from a mind that has stopped fighting with reality. This profound balance is not a personality trait one is born with. It is a quality that is born directly from wisdom. It rests upon the two great pillars of insight that we have already explored. The first pillar is the deep, cellular understanding of anicca, or impermanence. When we truly know, not just intellectually, but in our bones, that everything is a fleeting, passing show, our tendency to grasp and to resist begins to soften. If pleasure and pain, praise and blame, gain and loss are all just temporary weather patterns, why would we exhaust ourselves by chasing one and running from the other? Equanimity is the wisdom to stand calmly in the midst of the changing weather, knowing that the sun will not shine forever, but also that the storm will not rage forever. The second pillar is the insight into anatta, or no self. Our constant emotional reactivity, our being thrown off balance by life's events, is almost entirely rooted in the need to protect and defend the fragile ego. We are elated by praise because it inflates this me. We are devastated by blame because it threatens this me. Equanimity arises when we begin to see through this illusion. When there is no solid, separate self to defend, who is there to be praised? Who is there to be blamed? When we realize that our life is an impersonal, unfolding process, we can begin to meet our experiences with less personal investment, and therefore with far greater balance. The Buddhist tradition speaks of the 8 worldly winds, 4 pairs of opposites that are constantly blowing, threatening to push us off our center. They are pleasure and its opposite, pain, gain and its opposite, loss, praise and its opposite, blame, and fame and its opposite, disrepute. Our entire unexamined life is a reaction to these winds. We are like a frantic weather vane, spinning wildly in whichever direction the winds are blowing strongest, constantly seeking the pleasant winds and desperately trying to avoid the harsh ones. To cultivate equanimity is to learn to be like a great mountain. The winds may howl around it, the storms may crash against its slopes, the sun may beat down upon it, but the mountain itself remains vast, solid, and unmoved. It allows all the weather to happen, but it does not become the weather. A classic Zen story illuminates how this wisdom cuts the root of our reactivity. A man was rowing his boat upstream in a thick fog. It was quiet, and he was feeling a sense of peace. Suddenly, another boat came out of the mist and crashed into his with a loud thud. The man's peace was shattered. He was filled with rage. "You idiot!" he screamed into the fog. "Watch where you are going. What is wrong with you?" He was filled with righteous anger, ready for a confrontation. As he continued to shout, the fog began to lift, and as the other boat came into view, he saw that it was empty. It had simply come untied from its mooring and was drifting aimlessly down the river. In that instant, all of his anger vanished. He couldn't be angry at an empty boat. The collision was the same, the jolt was the same, but the anger disappeared because its target, a blameworthy other, was revealed to be an illusion. The Zen teaching that arises from this story is simple. Live your life as if every boat that bumps into you is an empty boat. See that the people who cause you harm are often not acting from a solid, malicious self, but are adrift, moved by the unseen currents of their own confusion, fear, and suffering. This perspective doesn't mean we let others harm us, but it allows us to respond with clarity and balance, rather than with blind, reactive anger. It allows us to keep our own inner peace. This quality of balance is absolutely essential for a life of compassion. Upekkha is what allows us to love the world without being destroyed by it. It is the grounding force that prevents compassion from turning into overwhelming grief, or what is sometimes called compassion fatigue. If we try to take on all the suffering of the world without the spaciousness of equanimity, we will surely drown. A surgeon must have compassion for her patient, but to perform a life-saving operation, her hand must be steady, her mind clear and balanced. She cannot be overwhelmed by the patient's fear and pain. In the same way, equanimity allows us to be fully present with great suffering, to offer our help and our love, but from a place of resilience and strength. It allows us to love fully and unconditionally, without the desperate clinging and attachment that so often turns love into a source of our own pain. We can wish for the happiness of others with all our heart, but without our own happiness being dependent on a specific outcome. Ultimately, the mind of equanimity is a mind that has become like space. Space allows everything to exist within it. It does not prefer the sun to the moon, the planets to the asteroids. It does not reject the storm cloud or cling to the beautiful nebula. It simply holds everything in its vast, silent, and undisturbed embrace. A mind that has cultivated upekkha is like this. It can contain joy and sorrow, anger and peace, fear and love. It allows all the experiences and emotions of life to arise, to play themselves out, and to pass away, without leaving a permanent stain and without disturbing the profound stillness at its core. This is the ultimate freedom, an inner peace that is not dependent on the ever-changing conditions of the external world. We have now explored the essential qualities of an awakened heart: the loving kindness that is its root, the compassion that is its response to suffering, the sympathetic joy that is its response to happiness, and the profound equanimity that is its stable foundation. These are not just beautiful theories to be admired, they are practical tools to be used. The true measure of these tools is how they function in the most difficult and turbulent moments of our lives. How do we bring this spacious, balanced, and compassionate awareness to bear when we are confronted with the raw, powerful, and often destructive energy of our own anger? It is to this very practical question that we now must turn. The awakened heart is not a fragile thing. It is a vast and spacious vessel, capable of holding the world's joy with mudita and its sorrow with karuna, all while being held steady by the profound balance of upekkha, equanimity. We have cultivated these qualities not as abstract ideals, but as practical tools for living a more peaceful and connected life. The true test of these tools, however, comes not when the seas are calm, but when the storms of our own emotions begin to rage. Of all these inner storms, few are as powerful, as frightening, and as potentially destructive as the raw energy of anger. It rises up like a volcano from deep within us, hot and fast, threatening to erupt and scorch everything in its path. Our relationship with this powerful energy is, for most of us, deeply troubled. We are taught that there are only two ways to deal with it, both of which are deeply unskillful and lead to further suffering. The first path is suppression. We are told that anger is a negative emotion, that good or spiritual people do not get angry. So when we feel its fiery energy begin to rise, we clamp down on it. We swallow it. We deny it. We push it down into the dark basement of our psyche, pretending it isn't there. But the energy does not disappear. Like a capped volcano, the pressure builds. Suppressed anger turns into a slow-burning poison. It manifests as chronic resentment, cynicism, bitterness, and depression. It leaks out in the form of passive aggression and sarcastic remarks. It can even turn inward, contributing to physical illnesses. Trying to destroy anger through suppression is like trying to drown a fire with gasoline. It only gives it a different, more insidious form. The second path is uncontrolled expression. This is the opposite strategy. We believe that we must let it all out to be healthy. When anger arises, we allow it to possess us completely. We become the volcano in full eruption. We lash out with hurtful words. We shout. We slam doors. We might even resort to physical violence. There may be a momentary feeling of release in this venting, but the aftermath is devastating. We damage our most precious relationships. We create deep wounds in others and in ourselves, and we are left with the bitter ashes of guilt and regret. This path does not transform anger. It merely rehearses and reinforces it, making it easier for us to become angry the next time. It turns us into a slave to our own reactivity. The wisdom of Zen offers a third way. It is not a path of suppression, nor is it a path of uncontrolled expression. It is a path of mindful transformation. It teaches us to neither run from our anger, nor to become it. It teaches us to face it, to hold it, and to care for it with wisdom and compassion. The first step in this practice is to radically reframe our understanding of what an emotion is. Anger is not your enemy. It is not a moral failing. It is not a sin to be eradicated. Anger is simply energy. It is a powerful, vital, and intelligent form of information. It is a messenger from the depths of your being, trying to tell you something important. It often arises to signal that a boundary has been crossed, that a deep value has been violated, that an injustice is occurring, or that a fundamental need is not being met. To suppress the messenger because you do not like the message is to ignore a vital piece of intelligence about your own life. The problem is not the energy of anger itself. The problem is that we do not know how to listen to its message or how to handle its powerful energy skillfully. So, what do we do when we feel this inner volcano begin to rumble? The practice is simple to describe, but it requires courage and consistency. The first step is to recognize its presence. Without judgment, without blame, we simply say to ourselves, anger is here. This simple act of recognition is incredibly powerful. It is the moment we shift from being possessed by the anger to being the one who is aware of the anger. In that moment, a space is created. The second step is to pause. Resist the powerful, habitual urge to immediately speak or act. Even a single conscious breath can create enough of a pause to interrupt the cycle of blind reaction. This pause is the moment where we reclaim our freedom. The third and most crucial step is to turn your attention inward. Instead of focusing on the external person or event that you believe made you angry, bring your awareness into the landscape of your own body. Where do you physically feel the anger? Is it a burning sensation in your stomach, a tightness in your chest, clenched fists, and a tight jaw, a surge of heat rising to your face, a racing heart? Let go of the story she said, and simply rest your attention on these raw physical sensations. Treat them as pure energy. Be curious about them. Are they solid or vibrating? Are they moving or still? Breathe with them. Imagine your breath entering your body and gently holding these sensations. as if you were surrounding them with space and tenderness. This is not about making the anger go away. It is about metabolizing its raw energy. It is about staying present with it until it trusts you enough to reveal its message. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offers a beautiful and profound analogy for this process. He asks us to think of our anger as a small crying baby. When a baby cries, what does a loving parent do? You would not scream at the baby to shut up. That would be uncontrolled expression. You would not lock the baby in another room and pretend you cannot hear it. That would be suppression. A loving parent would go to the baby, pick it up gently, and hold it tenderly. This is the act of turning inward and acknowledging our anger. Hello, my little anger. I know you are there. I am here for you. Holding the baby, you would soothe it with your calm presence, your warmth, your gentle rocking. This is the act of breathing with the physical sensations of the anger, holding them in the embrace of our mindfulness. Your presence reassures the baby that it is safe. Then, once the baby is a little calmer, you would look deeply to discover what it needs. Is it hungry? Is its diaper wet? Is it frightened? This is the final step of the practice, looking deeply into the root of our anger. Once we have held and soothed the raw energy, we can ask with genuine curiosity, what is this anger trying to tell me? What is the unmet need at its core? What boundary has been crossed? What am I truly afraid of right now? When we look with this compassionate clarity, the energy of anger begins to transform. The blind, destructive force of rage becomes a clear, focused, and powerful source of energy for wise action. It might become the energy to communicate our truth, but to do so calmly and clearly, from a place of I instead of you. When this happened, I felt hurt, instead of you are a terrible person. It might become the energy to set a firm and necessary boundary in a relationship or at work. On a larger scale, the anger we feel at social injustice or environmental destruction can be transformed from helpless rage into the focused, sustained, and compassionate action required to bring about positive change. The energy is the same. It is the wisdom with which it is wielded that makes all the difference. The ultimate transformation is when the energy of anger becomes the energy of compassion. As we look deeply, we often find that beneath our anger, at another person, lies our own hurt. And if we can look at them with the eyes of wisdom, we may see their own confusion, their own fear, their own suffering, the empty boat adrift on the currents of its own karma. The energy that was directed at them as an enemy can be transformed into a compassionate awareness of the suffering that is present in the whole situation. Learning to embrace our anger is a profound act of self-love and maturity. It is the alchemical art of turning the lead of our reactivity into the gold of our wisdom. But anger, in its volcanic intensity, is not the only difficult emotion that can hijack our peace. There is another, more subtle, and perhaps more pervasive affliction in our modern world. It is the quiet, constant, corrosive feeling that arises whenever we measure our lives against the lives of others. It is the pain of comparison, and to find true inner freedom, we must also learn to walk our own path with joy, regardless of where others may seem to be on theirs. In the inner world of the heart, we have begun to cultivate the great virtues of compassion, joy, and equanimity. We have learned to work with the fiery energy of anger, transforming it from a destructive force into a source of wisdom. Yet, even as we make progress on this path, there is another, more subtle poison that can seep into our minds, a quiet affliction that has become an epidemic in our modern world. It is the habit of comparison. It is the thief that silently steals our joy, the inner voice that constantly measures our life against the lives of others and always finds us wanting. We see a friend's career success and feel a pang of our own inadequacy. We see a stranger's beautiful family on social media and feel a sense of loneliness. We compare our bodies, our homes, our accomplishments, our very being, to an endless parade of external benchmarks. And in doing so, we live in a state of perpetual, low-grade suffering. This constant act of measuring is a guaranteed formula for unhappiness, and it is a trap we must learn to escape if we are ever to find true peace. This ancient human tendency has been placed under a powerful digital magnifying glass. In our time, social media platforms have become vast, global arenas for comparison. We are granted an intimate window into the lives of hundreds, even thousands of others, but it is a distorted and deceptive view. We are intimately familiar with the full reality of our own lives, what we might call our backstage. We know our own doubts, our fears, our messy kitchens, our boring moments, our struggles, and our insecurities. We live with the complete, unedited, three-dimensional truth of our own existence. Then, we pick up our phones and begin to scroll through the onstage performance of everyone else. We see their highlight reel, a carefully curated and filtered collection of their most triumphant, beautiful, and joyful moments. We see the perfect vacation photo, not the stressful travel day that preceded it. We see the happy anniversary post, not the difficult argument they had last week. We see the announcement of a new job, not the years of rejection and anxiety that came before it. We are comparing our backstage reality with their onstage performance, our complete truth with their polished fiction. This is a game that is rigged from the start, a game we are destined to lose every single time, because the comparison itself is based on a lie. The wisdom of Zen invites us to see the fallacy of comparison, not just on a psychological level, but on a spiritual one. The very idea of comparing one life to another is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. Each and every one of us is a completely unique expression of the universe. Your journey, with its specific combination of genetics, conditioning, joys, sorrows, and karmic tendencies, has never existed before and will never exist again. To compare your path to someone else's is as meaningless as the sun comparing itself to the moon. The sun does not lament that it cannot shine in the darkness of night. The moon does not feel inadequate because it does not possess the sun's fiery heat. Each has its own nature, its own purpose, its own beauty. Each shines when it is its time. Why is a rose not more like a pine tree? The question itself is absurd. A rose is perfect in its roseness. A pine tree is perfect in its pineness. And you are perfect in your you-ness. To wish for someone else's life, someone else's qualities, is to reject the unique miracle of your own existence. It is to wish that the universe had not created a rose, but another pine tree. There is an old story that speaks to this truth. In a forest, there grew a mighty oak tree, and, nearby, a slender reed. The oak was immensely proud of its strength. It looked down at the reed and scoffed. "Look at you, so weak and frail. You bow before every little breeze. I stand tall and strong, a master of this forest. I fear nothing." The reed did not answer. Soon, a great storm gathered. A furious wind, more powerful than any the forest had ever known, tore through the trees. The oak tree stood rigid, using all its mighty strength to resist the wind. It fought against the irresistible force of the storm, determined not to yield. The slender reed, however, did not fight. It simply bent low, yielding to the power of the wind, letting it pass over. When the storm had passed, the mighty oak tree, which had trusted in its perceived strength, lay broken and uprooted on the forest floor. The humble reed, which had embodied its own unique strength of flexibility, stood unharmed, gently straightening itself in the quiet aftermath. Each had its own nature. The oak's strength was its rigidity, and this became its downfall. The reed's strength was its flexibility, and this was its salvation. To compare them is to miss the deeper wisdom that each being has its own unique way of navigating the world. So, how do we begin to free ourselves from this deeply ingrained habit? We must consciously shift our gaze. The only comparison that is ever skillful or healthy is the one that looks not outward, but inward. The only person you should ever compare yourself to is the person you were yesterday. This turns the destructive, competitive energy of external comparison into a constructive, compassionate energy of personal growth. Instead of asking, "Am I as successful as my neighbor?" we can ask, "Am I a little kinder today than I was yesterday? Am I a little more patient, a little more present?" This is a game we can actually win. It puts the locus of control back into our own hands. Our sense of worth is no longer dependent on the fluctuating fortunes of others, but on our own commitment to our path. The most powerful antidote to the poison of comparison is the practice of gratitude. Comparison and gratitude are mutually exclusive states of mind. They cannot coexist. The mind of comparison is always focused on what is lacking. The mind of gratitude is focused on what is present. Envy is the pain of seeing what others have. Gratitude is the joy of seeing what you have. Cultivating gratitude is a direct and powerful way of retraining your mind. You can begin a simple practice. Every evening, before you sleep, take a moment to consciously recall 3 things from your day for which you are grateful. They do not have to be grand or dramatic. Perhaps it was the taste of your morning coffee, a kind word from a colleague, the comfort of your bed, the simple fact of your own breathing. By consciously scanning your day for moments of goodness, however small, you begin to change your default perspective from one of scarcity to one of abundance. You begin to water the flowers in your own garden rather than staring with resentment at the garden next door. Ultimately, escaping the comparison trap is about committing to walk your own path. Your life is not a race against anyone else. To be constantly looking over your shoulder to see where others are is to miss the profound beauty and unique texture of the very ground beneath your own feet. Your journey is yours alone. It has its own hills and valleys, its own challenges and rewards. To honor this journey, to live it fully and authentically, is the greatest gift you can give to yourself and to the world. And when we finally stop comparing our lives to some imagined external ideal, we can begin to turn our attention to the actual reality of our own life. We can begin to find a new kind of beauty, not a beauty based on perfection or flawlessness, but a deeper, more resonant beauty, one that embraces the chips, the cracks, the imperfections, and the impermanence that make our lives and everything in the world so uniquely and poignantly real. Having taken the courageous step to disengage from the great comparison trap, we begin to turn our attention away from the imagined perfection of other lives and toward the authentic reality of our own. We have committed to walking our own path. But what do we find when we look closely at this path? We do not find flawlessness. We find a life that is, by its very nature, imperfect, incomplete, and subject to the constant, relentless law of impermanence. Our modern culture, with its obsession for the new, the shiny, and the perfect, has taught us to see these qualities as failures. We are conditioned to hide our flaws, to resist the process of aging, to discard anything that shows the slightest sign of wear. This endless pursuit of an impossible ideal is a source of profound exhaustion and dissatisfaction. It is a war we are waging against reality itself, a war we can never win. But what if there were another way to see? What if we could find a deep and resonant beauty, not in spite of imperfection and impermanence, but because of them? There is an ancient Japanese worldview, an aesthetic and spiritual sensibility that offers us this very perspective. It is called wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi is not a concept that can be easily and precisely defined, for it is more of a feeling, an intuition, a way of perceiving the world. It is composed of two separate but intertwined ideas. Wabi speaks of a quiet, rustic simplicity. It is the feeling of being content with little, of finding richness in a life that is uncluttered and humble. It is the peaceful feeling of a simple wooden cabin, not the ostentatious grandeur of a marble palace. It is an inner state of tranquility that is free from the need for external polish or validation. Sabi, on the other hand, speaks to the beauty of age and the passage of time. It is the recognition that beauty can be found in the marks of wear, in the evidence of a life being lived. It is the dark patina on an old bronze statue, the subtle sheen on a wooden table that has been used for generations, the elegant tracery of a crack in a ceramic pot. Sabi is the beauty of things that are weathered, worn, and touched by the gentle and sometimes harsh hand of time. It is the visible signature of impermanence. Together, wabi-sabi is a philosophy that finds beauty in things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. It is a profound counterpoint to the dominant aesthetic of our consumer culture, which worships at the altar of mass-produced perfection, symmetry, and eternal newness. Our culture tells us to throw away the chipped cup and buy a new, flawless one. Wabi-sabi invites us to cherish the chipped cup, to see the crack as a part of its unique history, a mark of its service in our life. Our culture tells us to fight the signs of aging with every available resource, to pursue an eternal, unblemished youth. Wabi-sabi invites us to find a quiet beauty and dignity in the lines on our face, seeing them not as a sign of decay, but as a map of our life's journey, a record of our laughter and our tears. It is a gentle, compassionate, and deeply realistic way of seeing the world. It does not fight against the truth of reality. It finds the beauty within that truth. There is a story about the great 16th century tea master, Senno Rikyu, who was the foremost practitioner of the wabi-sabi aesthetic. One day, his son was cleaning the garden path in preparation for a tea ceremony. Wanting to impress his father, the son worked for hours, meticulously sweeping and raking until the garden was in a state of absolute perfection. Not a single leaf was out of place. Not a stone was misaligned. He proudly presented his work to his father. Rikyu quietly inspected the pristine garden. Then, without a word, he walked over to a maple tree, took one of its branches in his hand, and gave it a gentle shake. A few crimson leaves fluttered down, scattering randomly and naturally upon the immaculate mossy ground. Only then did Rikyu nod in approval. "This," he explained, "is how we welcome our guests." The son had created a garden that was technically perfect, but it was sterile, lifeless, and it spoke of human effort. By adding the small, random imperfection of the fallen leaves, Rikyu had returned the garden to its natural state. He had reintroduced the breath of wabi-sabi, reminding his son that true beauty is not about a rigid, man-made perfection, but about an appreciation for the humble, natural, and imperfect flow of life itself. To cultivate this way of seeing is to transform our relationship with our own lives. We can begin to find wabi-sabi all around us, turning the mundane into the meaningful. Look around your own home. Perhaps there is a wooden cutting board, scarred and marked from the thousands of meals it has helped to prepare. Our culture might see it as old and worn out. Wabi-sabi sees the beauty and history in its scars. Perhaps there is a favorite sweater that is slightly frayed at the cuffs, or a beloved book whose spine is cracked and pages are softened with use. These are not flaws. These are testaments to love and to a life being lived. To embrace wabi-sabi is to choose authenticity over polish, character over perfection. We can find it in nature. It is the beauty of an asymmetrical, gnarled pine tree growing on a windswept cliff. It is the quiet melancholy of a misty grey morning. It is the intricate, filigreed pattern of a decaying autumn leaf. It teaches us to see that life is beautiful, not just in its vibrant summer fullness, but also in its quiet autumn decline. It is an appreciation for the entire cycle of life, including its inevitable decay. Most profoundly, we can apply the wisdom of wabi-sabi to ourselves. We spend so much of our lives trying to hide our imperfections, to present a flawless facade to the world. We are ashamed of our scars, our vulnerabilities, our quirks. Wabi-sabi is the practice of radical self-acceptance. It is learning to love the person we are, not the person we think we should be. It is seeing the unique character in our own asymmetries. It is understanding that our past wounds and heartbreaks, when healed, are not signs of damage, but sources of deep strength and compassion. It is the ultimate expression of kindness toward our own imperfect, impermanent, and utterly unique existence. It allows us to finally relax, to let go of the exhausting burden of trying to be perfect, and to simply be ourselves. When we adopt this perspective, a deep sense of peace and contentment can begin to permeate our lives. The frantic search for perfection gives way to a quiet appreciation for the real. We no longer need life to be shiny and new to find it beautiful. We can find it in the ordinary, the humble, and the overlooked. We are making peace with reality, and in that peace, we find a beauty that is more soulful, more resonant, and more true than any polished perfection could ever be. This new way of seeing, this aesthetic of acceptance and appreciation, naturally begins to influence how we approach our daily activities. If beauty can be found in a cracked cup or a fallen leaf, then perhaps it can also be found in the simple, repetitive tasks that make up our day. When we stop striving for an ideal life and start paying attention to our real life, every moment becomes an opportunity for practice. Every act becomes a potential gateway to presence. It is to this art of weaving mindfulness into the fabric of our everyday lives that we now turn. The journey inward has led us to a new way of seeing the world and our place within it. We have learned to embrace imperfection with the spirit of wabi-sabi and to walk our own path, free from the trap of comparison. These are not just philosophical ideas. They are shifts in perception that change how we feel about our lives. But a common question arises for anyone on a spiritual path. How do we bridge the gap between the peace we might find in quiet contemplation and the chaotic demands of our everyday existence? We may feel a sense of calm and clarity while sitting on a meditation cushion, only to find it evaporates the moment we stand up and are confronted with traffic, deadlines, and difficult relationships. There can feel like a great chasm between our spiritual practice and our real life. The wisdom of Zen teaches us that this separation is an illusion. The true purpose of formal meditation is not to create a temporary refuge from the world, but to train the mind to be present for the world. The time we spend in quiet sitting, is like an athlete going to the gym. An athlete lifts weights not to become good at lifting weights inside the gym, but to build the strength necessary to perform with power and grace out on the field of play. In the same way, we sit in meditation to train the muscle of our attention, to cultivate the strength of our presence, so that we can bring that calm, clear, and compassionate awareness into every moment of our lives. The real practice begins when we get off the cushion. The core principle of this meditation in action is beautifully simple. Whatever you are doing, just do that. Be fully present for that one activity. In our normal state, we are masters of division. While we are eating, we are thinking about work. While we are working, we are dreaming of our vacation. While we are on vacation, we are worrying about things back home. We are physically in one place, while our minds are scattered across 5 others. This constant fragmentation is a primary source of stress, inefficiency, and the feeling that we are never truly living our lives. The practice of meditation in action is the art of gathering our scattered self back together, of bringing mind and body into alignment in the present moment. Let us explore how to apply this to some ordinary activities. We can begin with the simple act of walking. Often, walking is just a way to get from point A to point B, our minds lost in thought the entire time. In Zen, there is a formal practice called kinhin, or walking meditation, that serves as a beautiful bridge between sitting and daily life. You can practice this anywhere. As you walk, slow down your pace just a little. Bring your attention out of your head and down into your body. Feel the sensations of your feet making contact with the ground. Notice the subtle shift of weight as you lift one foot, the feeling of it moving through the air, and the sensation of it being placed down again. You can coordinate your breath with your steps, perhaps taking 3 steps for each in-breath and 3 steps for each out-breath. You are not trying to get anywhere. You are simply being with the experience of walking. The walking itself is the destination. Or consider the act of eating. We can transform a meal from a rushed refueling stop into a rich, healing meditation. Before you take the first bite, pause. Look at the food on your plate. See the colors, the shapes, the textures. Consider for a moment all the causes and conditions that had to come together to bring this food to you. The sun, the rain, the earth, the farmer, the truck driver, the grocer. This is a moment of gratitude. Then, as you take the first bite, do so with your full attention. Put down your fork. Notice the aroma, the texture in your mouth, the complex flavors as you chew. Try to eat the entire meal in this way, with as much presence as you can muster. When your mind wanders, as it will, gently guide it back to the sensations of eating. You will find that the food tastes more vibrant, and the act of nourishing your body becomes a profound act of connection to the earth. Perhaps the most classic Zen example is the transformation of a mundane chore, like washing the dishes, into a practice of enlightenment. Most of us see washing dishes as a tedious task, to be rushed through as quickly as possible, so we can get on to something more important. But a Zen master would ask, if you cannot be present for this, how can you be present for anything? The practice is to wash the dishes. To wash the dishes, stand at the sink and feel the warmth of the water on your hands. Notice the weight and texture of the plate you are holding. See the beautiful, iridescent shimmer of the soap bubbles. Hear the sound of the water, the gentle clink of the dishes. Smell the clean fragrance of the soap. Allow your movements to be deliberate and graceful, not rushed and frantic. In these few minutes, your only job in the entire universe is to clean this one dish. When you do this, the chore is transformed. It is no longer a burden. It becomes a peaceful ritual, a luxurious sensory experience, a moment of profound calm and simplicity. The truth is, If you are not capable of finding peace while washing the dish, you are unlikely to find it anywhere else. Peace is not in the activity, it is in the quality of your attention to the activity. There is a famous Zen dialogue that captures the very essence of this teaching. A young, eager student asks a wise old master, "Venerable sir, what did you do before you became enlightened?" The master thought for a moment and replied, "I chopped wood and I carried water." The student, expecting a more esoteric answer, was a little disappointed, but he pressed on. "And what do you do now, after you have attained enlightenment?" The master smiled and replied, "I chop wood and I carry water." The student was now completely baffled. "Then, what is the difference?" he exclaimed. "What was all the practice for, if nothing has changed?" The master's smile widened. "Ah," he said, "there is a great difference. Before I was enlightened, when I was chopping wood, I was thinking about carrying water. When I was carrying water, I was thinking about cooking the rice. My mind was always somewhere else. Now, when I chop wood, I just chop wood. When I carry water, I just carry water. My mind is fully present with what I am doing. That is the only difference, and it is all the difference in the world. This is the secret. Enlightenment is not an escape from the ordinary tasks of life. It is the ability to be fully present for them. The goal is not to stop chopping wood and carrying water, but to bring your whole self to the chopping and the carrying. Any activity done with this kind of wholehearted, non-judgmental attention becomes a meditation. Driving your car can be a meditation. Feeling the wheel in your hands and seeing the road ahead. Taking a shower can be a meditation. Feeling the water on your skin. Folding laundry, listening to music, playing with your child, all of these are golden opportunities to practice coming home to the present moment. This is not about adding more to your to-do list. It is about simplifying. It is about doing less, not more. It is about just doing the one thing you are already doing. As we begin to weave this practice into the fabric of our day, something remarkable happens. The artificial wall we have constructed between our spiritual life and our real life begins to crumble. We realize that meditation is not just something that happens on a cushion in a quiet room for 20 minutes a day. Life itself becomes the meditation hall. The sounds of traffic become the temple bells, reminding us to be present. The challenges in our relationships become our koans, our opportunities for deeper insight. When we can be fully present with the simple act of washing a dish, we realize that the sacred is not separate from the ordinary. The holy is found right here, in the heart of our everyday existence. And this realization leads us to an even deeper truth. If there is no separation between the sacred and the mundane, perhaps there is also no separation between suffering and liberation, between our troubled world and the peace we seek. Our journey of practice has brought us into the very heart of our daily lives. We have discovered that any activity, from washing a dish to walking down the street, can become a gateway to presence when performed with wholehearted attention. This practice begins to dissolve the artificial wall between our spiritual life and our real life, revealing that the sacred is not hidden away in some remote temple, but is woven into the very fabric of our ordinary existence. This profound insight now leads us to confront one of the most fundamental dualisms that drives the human search for meaning: the separation between our current, flawed reality and a future, perfected state of being. In many spiritual traditions, this is framed as a great journey of escape. We are told that we are trapped in samsara, world of endless, repeating cycles of suffering, a realm of birth and death, frustration and disappointment. The goal, we are told, is to strive to purify ourselves, to accumulate merit, so that we might one day escape this painful world and arrive in a perfect, peaceful paradise called nirvana. This model presents life as a painful exile and liberation as a distant destination. It encourages a subtle but pervasive rejection of the very life we are living right now. The wisdom of Zen, in its most direct and radical form, takes this entire dualistic model and turns it completely on its head. It makes a statement that is at first shocking, then confusing, and finally, profoundly liberating. Samsara is nirvana. They are not two different places. They are not two different realities. They are the exact same reality, experienced through two different states of mind. Let us look at this more closely. What is samsara? It is not the world itself. The trees are not samsara. The rivers, the mountains, the people, the cities, these are not samsara. Samsara is a particular way of experiencing the world. It is the experience of reality as seen through the distorted, clouded lens of a mind consumed by ignorance, grasping, and aversion. It is the experience of the monkey mind, endlessly chasing pleasure and fleeing from pain, caught in the cycle of hope and fear. It is the world perceived from the prison of the separate self, a world that seems hostile, frustrating, and fundamentally unsatisfying. Samsara is not a place. It is a state of suffering, born from a deluded mind. And what is nirvana? The word literally means to extinguish, as in extinguishing the flame of a candle. It is not a heavenly place with clouds and angels. It is the extinguishing of the three fires that cause all suffering: the fire of greed, the fire of hatred, and the fire of ignorance. Nirvana is what remains when the clouds of ego dissolve. It is the experience of this very same world, the same trees, the same rivers, the same people, but seen through a lens that is clear, open, and free. It is reality, experienced directly, without the filter of our desires and fears. The world does not change. What changes is our capacity to see it as it truly is. Imagine you are looking at a beautiful landscape through a window that is caked with years of mud and grime. You would see only distorted shapes, darkness, and ugliness. You would believe the landscape itself is a miserable place. This is samsara. The spiritual practice is not a journey to a different, more beautiful landscape. It is simply the work of cleaning your own window. When the window is clean, you look out and see the same landscape, but now you perceive its breathtaking beauty. This is nirvana. The landscape was never the problem. This leads to another core teaching of Zen, one that can sound utterly paradoxical. The afflictions themselves are enlightenment. Our problems, our anxieties, our anger, our sorrows, all the messy, difficult, painful aspects of our lives are not obstacles on the path to awakening. They are the path. The lotus flower, a great symbol of enlightenment, does not grow on a pristine marble pedestal. It grows only out of the thick, dark, nutrient-rich mud. Without the mud, there can be no lotus. In the same way, without the mud of our own human suffering, our own confusion, our own afflictions, there can be no growth, no wisdom, no compassion. Each moment of frustration is an opportunity to practice patience. Each pang of jealousy is an opportunity to cultivate sympathetic joy. Each surge of anger is an opportunity to transform that energy into compassion. Our samsaric life is not something to be escaped from. It is the very raw material, the sacred compost from which our awakening blossoms. The great Zen master Hakuin illustrated this truth with a now legendary encounter. A fierce, proud samurai a warrior of high rank, came to Hakuin's temple and demanded, "Tell me, old monk, do heaven and hell truly exist?" Hakuin looked the imposing warrior up and down with an air of disdain. "A dull-witted, oafish-looking fellow like you asks about heaven and hell?" he scoffed. "Your sword looks as rusty as your mind. You wouldn't be able to cut the head off a fly." The samurai's face turned crimson with rage. The insult to his honor and his sword was unbearable. He became completely possessed by his anger, and with a roar, he drew his massive sword and raised it, ready to strike the master down. At that very instant, as the samurai stood trembling with fury, Hakuin calmly pointed a finger at him and said softly, "Here, open the gates of hell." The samurai was a man of great discipline, and in that moment, Hakuin's words cut through his rage like a lightning bolt. He froze. He understood instantly. The hell the master spoke of was not some fiery underworld. It was the state of his own mind, consumed by hatred, violence, and the fire of an insulted ego. It was happening right here, right now, inside of him. His rage subsided as quickly as it had appeared. Humbled and filled with a profound sense of gratitude and understanding, he sheathed his sword and bowed deeply before the master. Hakuin watched him, and a gentle smile spread across his face. "And here," he said, just as softly, "open the gates of heaven." This story reveals the ultimate truth of our inner life. Heaven and hell are not future destinations we earn with our actions. They are states of mind we inhabit from moment to moment. A mind at war with itself, consumed by anger and fear, creates a living hell, regardless of external circumstances. A mind that is at peace, that is clear and compassionate, creates a living heaven, even in the midst of difficulty. Liberation is not somewhere else. Suffering is not somewhere else. They are both available, right now, in this very spot. The choice is ours in every moment. And so, the great spiritual quest is revealed to be not a journey through space and time to a distant goal, but a journey of vertical descent, a dropping into the profound reality of this very moment, just as it is. There is nowhere to go, nothing to attain, no one to become. The peace you seek is not in a different life, a different place, or a different version of yourself. It is already here, your own deepest nature, obscured only by the restless search for something more. To stop running, to stop striving, to let go of the search for a future salvation, and to simply arrive in your own, ordinary, imperfect, beautiful life. This is the great homecoming. But how does one realize a truth that is beyond goals and achievements? The logical mind, which thinks in terms of cause and effect, problem and solution, struggles with this. To break through this conceptual thinking and allow for a direct, intuitive seeing, Zen employs a unique and powerful method, a question that is designed not to be answered, but to dissolve the one who is asking. Our path has led us to a profound and revolutionary understanding. The liberation we seek is not in a distant future or a faraway place. It is available right here, in this very moment, in the heart of our ordinary life. The kingdom of heaven and the fires of hell are not destinations, but states of mind we create and inhabit from one breath to the next. Samsara and Nirvana are two names for the same reality, seen through either a clouded or a clear lens. This is the great secret of the Zen path, but it is a secret that presents a unique challenge to our ordinary way of thinking. Our rational mind, the part of us that plans, analyzes, and solves problems, is built on a foundation of duality. It thinks in terms of cause and effect, problem and solution, here and there, now and then. It wants a map to get from the bad place of suffering to the good place of peace. When it is told that the starting point and the destination are the same, it becomes confused. It short-circuits. How can one achieve a state that one already inhabits? How does one attain a truth that is already true? To address this very paradox, one school of Zen, the Rinzai school, developed a unique and powerful spiritual technology. It is a method designed to bypass the linear, logical mind altogether, to exhaust its ceaseless chatter, and to precipitate a direct, intuitive breakthrough into reality as it is. This tool is known as the koan. The word koan literally means a public case, referring to a perplexing story, a paradoxical statement, or a baffling question, often taken from the sayings of the great Zen masters of the past. A koan is not a riddle. A riddle has a clever answer that the intellect can eventually figure out. A koan, on the other hand, is a spiritual hand grenade. It is designed to explode the conceptual mind, to shatter our reliance on logic, and to open a doorway to a different way of knowing. Let us consider some of the most famous koans. A master holds up one hand and asks his student, "We all know the sound of two hands clapping. What is the sound of one hand?" The student's logical mind immediately goes to work. Is the answer silence? The master says no. Is it the sound of the wind? Number. Is it a philosophical concept about unity? Number. Every answer the intellect can produce is rejected, because every answer is a concept. The question is a direct invitation to experience a reality that is beyond the duality of sound and silence. Another well-known koan asks, "What was your original face before your parents were born?" This question immediately pulls the rug out from under our entire sense of identity. We identify with our body, our name, our personality, our history, of which came into being after our parents were born. The koan forces us to inquire into our true nature, the timeless awareness that exists prior to and independent of this temporary, constructed self. It points directly to the open, spacious sky of the mind, not the passing clouds of our personal story. Perhaps the most famous koan of all is the story of a monk who asked the great master Zhao, "Does a dog have Buddha nature?" This was a trick question, as Mahayana Buddhist doctrine states that all beings, without exception, possess the potential for enlightenment. A simple yes would have been the doctrinally correct answer, but Zhao replied with a single, sharp syllable, "Mu." Mu is often translated as no or not, but it is more accurately the sound of cutting. With this one sound, Zhao was cutting off the monk's speculative, conceptual thinking entirely. The practice for a student given this koan is not to philosophize about why Zhao said no, but to become one with the sound and the spirit of Mu, to use it as a sword to cut through every thought that arises. In a traditional Zen monastery, the practice of working with a koan is an intense and all-consuming discipline. A student is given a koan by their master and is instructed to pour their entire being into it. They must live with the koan day and night. While eating, while working, while sitting in meditation, the question must burn within them. At first, they will try to solve it with their intellect, and they will fail. They will present their clever answers to the master, who will reject them, sometimes gently, sometimes with a shout, or even a blow from a stick. This process is designed to create a state known as great doubt. This is not the ordinary skepticism of a questioning mind. It is a profound, existential state of not knowing that becomes so intense, it feels like a physical pressure, a spiritual crisis. The mind, having exhausted all its tricks and strategies, becomes like a cornered animal with nowhere left to turn. The ego, with its desperate need to know and to be in control, is pushed to its absolute breaking point. It is precisely at this point of total exhaustion and surrender that a breakthrough can occur. There is a story of a monk who struggled with his koan for many years. He felt himself to be a complete failure. He had tried everything, and every answer had been rejected. His intellectual pride was shattered, and he was filled with despair. One day, while sweeping the monastery garden, completely absorbed in his state of not knowing, his broom flicked a small pebble through the air. He heard the sharp thwack of the pebble striking a stalk of bamboo. In that single, unexpected instant, his mind stopped. The tension of the great doubt shattered. The distinction between himself and the sound, between himself and the universe, between himself and the koan, dissolved. He was filled with a flood of laughter and tears, and he ran to the master's room to confirm his deep, direct, and wordless understanding. He had not solved the koan. He had become the answer. For us, listening to these stories, the purpose is not to try and solve these koans ourselves. To do so would be to miss the point entirely. The purpose is to appreciate that there is another way of knowing, a way that our Western culture has largely forgotten. We place an enormous value on the rational, the analytical, the logical. We believe that every problem has a solution that can be found through thinking. The koan is a powerful reminder of the limits of thought. It demonstrates that the deepest truths of life and death, of self and universe, are not found in concepts, no matter how profound. They are revealed only in direct, unmediated experience. The koan is an invitation to become comfortable with the phrase, "I don't know," not as a statement of ignorance, but as a gateway to wonder. It is a call to trust our intuition, to listen to the wisdom of our own direct experience, and to recognize that the most important doors in life are sometimes opened not by finding the right key, but by letting go of the search for a key altogether. In a sense, life itself is constantly presenting us with koans, a sudden loss, an unexpected joy, a challenging relationship, and a moment of profound, natural beauty. These are all experiences that can stop our thinking minds in their tracks and open us up to the deeper mystery of existence. The great question that brought you here, what is the meaning of this life, is your personal koan. You will not find the answer in a book, a lecture, or a neat philosophical formula. The answer is not a sentence. The answer is found in the living of it, in the direct experience of your own breath, your own heart, your own original face. Whether one arrives at this direct seeing through the profound stillness of sitting meditation or through the dynamic, mind-shattering inquiry of a koan, the result is not a state of blissful paralysis or a withdrawal from the world. It is a deep and fundamental shift in how one lives. The person who has had even a glimpse of their own true nature does not sprout wings and fly away. They return to the marketplace. They return to their ordinary life, but they live that ordinary life in an extraordinary way. It is to this transformed life that we must now look. Our journey has taken us through the intricate landscapes of the mind, from the restless chatter of the monkey mind to the profound silence of emptiness. We have explored powerful tools for transformation, from the quiet discipline of mindfulness to the mind-shattering inquiry of the koan. We have followed the path of Zen to its ultimate promise, the possibility of awakening, of enlightenment. But what does this word even mean? What does it actually look like to live an enlightened life? Our culture is filled with fantasies about this state. We imagine a person floating on a cloud, perpetually smiling, immune to all pain, perhaps surrounded by a faint golden halo. We think of miracles, of psychic powers, of a blissful escape from the messy realities of being human. These are projections of the ego. The ego, with its constant need to be special, imagines enlightenment as the ultimate spiritual achievement, the ultimate specialness. The truth of Zen is far more subtle, more grounded, and infinitely more beautiful. The path of awakening does not lead to becoming a superhero. It leads to becoming a truly, authentically, and fully human being. An enlightened life is, from the outside, a perfectly ordinary life. The person who has awakened still has to eat, to sleep, to work, to pay their bills. They still get stuck in traffic. They still feel the heat of summer and the cold of winter. They do not develop an immunity to life's challenges. They do not suddenly become perfect. The great transformation is not external. It is entirely internal. It is a fundamental shift in the quality of experience. It is the art of living an ordinary life in an extraordinary way. The first hallmark of this life is a profound and unwavering presence. Through years of practice, the mind has been tamed. The frantic, time-traveling monkey has grown quiet and now rests peacefully. There is no longer a division between mind and body. When this person drinks a cup of tea, they are not thinking about yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's appointments. They are fully engaged in the experience. The warmth of the cup, the aroma of the steam, the flavor of the tea. Their mind and their body are in the same place at the same time. This total presence means that their responses to life arise naturally, spontaneously, and appropriately to the situation at hand. There is no longer the constant interference of the ego, with its endless calculations of what's in it for me, or how do I look right now? The response to a crying child is simply to comfort the child. The response to a question is simply to answer honestly. There is a directness and a simplicity to their actions, because the static of self-referential thought has been turned down. This leads to the second, and perhaps most palpable, quality of an awakened life: the end of the inner war. The ordinary state of the human mind is a state of civil war. We are a house divided against itself. One part of us wants to be healthy, another part wants to eat the cake. One part wants to be patient, another part is seething with irritation. We are constantly caught in a battle between our desires and our aversions, our hopes and our fears. We live with a constant background noise of regret, second-guessing, and inner conflict. The enlightened life is one of profound inner peace, because this war has ended. There is a fundamental acceptance of reality as it is, both internally and externally. This does not mean a passive resignation. It means the cessation of the futile struggle against the flow of life. With this inner peace comes a tremendous sense of ease. There is less striving, less forcing, less trying to manage and control everything. Life becomes less of a project to be managed and more of a dance to be enjoyed. And with this ease comes a deep, gentle humor. When you can clearly see the absurd and self-important dramas of the ego, both in yourself and in others, you cannot help but smile. There is a lightness, a playfulness that permeates everything. The great Zen master Qingwan Weishen described this journey in a famous and beautiful teaching. He said, "Before I began the practice of Zen, mountains were mountains and rivers were rivers. After I had practiced Zen for some time, mountains were no longer mountains and rivers were no longer rivers. But now that I have attained enlightenment, mountains are once again mountains and rivers are once again rivers." This profound statement maps out the entire spiritual path. The first stage mountains were mountains, and rivers were rivers, is the state of naive, ordinary consciousness. We see the world as a collection of solid, separate objects. We take reality at face value and do not question it. The second stage, mountains were no longer mountains, and rivers were no longer rivers, represents the deconstructive phase of the practice. This is the stage we have been exploring. Through the insights of anatta and sunyata, we have seen that the mountain is not a solid, independent thing, but a dynamic, ever-changing process of interconnected elements. The river is not a separate entity, but a manifestation of the entire water cycle. The seemingly solid world dissolves into a shimmering, vibrant web of interdependence. This is the stage of philosophical insight, and it is crucial. But it is also possible to get stuck here, lost in a world of abstract concepts. The final stage, mountains are once again mountains, and rivers are once again rivers, is the state of awakened seeing. It is the great return to the ordinary. The world is seen simply as it is, without the filter of heavy conceptualization. A mountain is just a mountain. A river is just a river. But the one who is seeing has been fundamentally transformed. They now see the mountainness of the mountain with a breathtaking clarity, intimacy, and wonder that was previously impossible. They see both its conventional reality as a mountain and its ultimate reality as an empty, interdependent process. And there is no conflict between the two. The world has not changed, but it has become completely transparent, radiant, and alive. This leads to the final quality of this life, the nature of its happiness. The happiness most of us know is conditional. It depends on things going our way. It depends on getting praise, achieving goals, experiencing pleasure. It is fragile and fleeting, always at the mercy of the 8 worldly winds. The peace of an awakened being is unconditional. It is not dependent on whether the sun is shining or the storm is raging. It is the deep, quiet contentment that is the very nature of a mind that is at home with itself. It is the peace of the mountain, which remains peaceful even when the winds howl around it. This does not mean that an enlightened person does not feel sadness or pain. They feel everything, perhaps more deeply than before. But these feelings are like waves passing on the surface of a deep, still ocean. The surface may be turbulent, but the depths remain profoundly, unshakably peaceful. This is a happiness that cannot be given and cannot be taken away. This life of extraordinary ordinariness, of profound presence and unconditional peace, is not a myth or a fantasy. It is the natural state of a human being who has cleared away the dust and confusion that obscures their own true nature. It is not about becoming someone else. It is about finally becoming yourself. With this grounded, realistic understanding of where this path leads, we are now fully prepared to circle back, to return to the great question that set our entire journey in motion. Armed with all that we have seen and understood, how do we now approach the ultimate koan of our existence? What, in the end, is the meaning of this life? And so, we arrive at the end of our path, only to find ourselves standing in the very place where we began. We are here, in the midst of our ordinary lives, with the same breath, the same body, and the same world around us. But our journey inward has brought us to this familiar place, with a new pair of eyes and a new quality of heart. We are now ready to face the great question that initiated our quest, the question that echoes in the quiet moments of so many human lives. What is the meaning of this life? We began this journey seeking an answer, perhaps hoping for a secret formula, a profound statement, a final, definitive truth that would solve the puzzle of our existence once and for all. The radical and liberating teaching of Zen is that there is no such answer to be found, and that is the best news of all. The Zen path does not offer you a pre-packaged meaning to believe in. It does not hand you a beautiful, finished sculpture and say, "Here, this is the meaning of life." Instead, it hands you a chisel and a hammer. It trusts you to do the work of chipping away all that is not you all, the layers of fear, of confusion, of false identity, of conditioned belief dough, reveal the magnificent sculpture that has been there all along, hidden within the raw block of your own being. The purpose of this path is not to add something to you, but to remove the obstacles that prevent you from experiencing the profound, inherent meaning that is already pulsing in the heart of every moment. It is to clean the window so that you might see the beauty of the landscape that has always been right outside. Where then is this meaning to be found? It is not found in a grand theory or a philosophical conclusion. It is found in the lived, felt, embodied experience of your own life. When that life is met with awareness and an open heart, the meaning of life is the feeling of your own breath entering your body, a quiet anchor in the storms of the mind. It is the simple, wholehearted act of washing a single dish as if it were the most important thing in the universe. It is the courage to sit with the fire of your own anger, holding it with the tenderness of a mother holding a crying child. It is the expansive joy you feel when you can genuinely celebrate the success of a friend, free from the poison of envy. It is the unshakable balance you discover in yourself when the winds of praise and blame blow, and you are not moved. The meaning of life is found in the poignant beauty of a falling autumn leaf, a direct lesson in impermanence. It is in the shared laughter with a loved one, a momentary glimpse into the truth of our interconnectedness. It is in the silent, compassionate understanding that arises when you look at a difficult person and see not an enemy, but another suffering being, another empty boat adrift on the river. The great error is to believe that meaning is a destination, a treasure hidden at the end of a long and arduous journey. This belief keeps us perpetually dissatisfied with the here and now, always striving for a future moment of resolution that never arrives. The question itself, what is the meaning of life, arises from a mind that feels disconnected, a mind that is living in the abstract realms of the past and future. When you are fully present, when you are completely absorbed in the reality of this moment, the question dissolves. A person truly listening to a beautiful piece of music is not asking, "What is the meaning of this music?" They have become the music. A person looking with awe at a magnificent sunset is not asking, "What is the meaning of this sunset?" They have merged with the beauty of the moment. The question vanishes when you arrive in the answer, and the answer is always here. And so, the inquiry shifts. The question is not, what is the meaning of life? The real question is, how can I live a meaningful life from this moment to the next? And the answer is, by being present for it. There is a famous series of 10 pictures in Zen that illustrates the entire spiritual journey. They are known as the 10 ox herding pictures. The sequence depicts a farmer searching for his lost ox, which represents his own true nature, or Buddha nature. In the first pictures, he searches frantically. Then he sees the ox's tracks. Then he gets a glimpse of the ox itself. He struggles to catch it and tame it with a rope and a whip. Gradually, the ox becomes gentle, and he is able to ride it home, playing a flute. In a later picture, the ox is forgotten. The farmer is alone, at peace with himself. Then, even the farmer himself disappears. There is only an empty circle, representing the realization of sunyata, the emptiness of all things. This is the peak of insight, the realization that there is no separate self to be found. But this is not the end of the story. If it were, enlightenment would be a cold, empty state of nothingness. The most important picture is the 10th and final one. It is called returning to the marketplace with bliss-bestowing hands. In this picture, the enlightened sage does not remain in a state of transcendent emptiness on a remote mountaintop. He returns to the world. He is depicted as a fat, jolly, barefoot man, his robes open, carrying a gourd of wine and a large cloth sack filled with gifts. He is walking into the village, into the dusty, noisy, chaotic marketplace. He is mingling with the butchers, the fishmongers, the children, and the beggars. He is utterly ordinary, radiating a simple, infectious joy and a quiet, unassuming compassion. This is the ultimate fruition of the Zen path. It is not an escape from the world, but a complete and loving re-engagement with it. It is the understanding that the highest awakening is to live a perfectly ordinary life, but to do so with a completely transformed heart. The journey does not lead us away from our humanity, but deeper into it. And so, we return to where we began, but everything has changed. The meaning of life is not a riddle to be solved. It is a reality to be lived. It is not a treasure to be found, but a path to be walked. It is the texture of the ground beneath your feet right now. It is the quality of your attention in this very moment. The answer to the great koan of your existence is the life that is looking out through your own eyes right now. There is nothing else to seek. There is only this, to be fully here for the simple, profound, and sacred miracle of it all. We have traveled a great distance together, on a journey not through space, but through the inner landscapes of the mind and heart. Our path began in the shadow of a quiet question, a feeling of unease that haunts the modern world. We started by meeting the restless, chattering mind and the powerful illusion of a separate self that it creates. We then walked through the great truths of existence, seeing the universal nature of impermanence and our profound interconnection with all of life. Along the way, we discovered practical tools for this journey: the simple anchor of the breath, the gentle art of seeing with a beginner's mind, and the transformative power of a heart that is open to both the world's sorrow and its joy. We followed this path to its natural conclusion, the realization that our ordinary life is not an obstacle to be overcome, but the very ground of our awakening, and that the peace we seek is not a distant destination, but a reality to be discovered in the heart of this present moment. If there is a single, core message to be taken from this journey, it is this: peace is not something you must earn, achieve, or find. It is your own essential nature. It is the silent, spacious awareness that was present before your first thought and will be present after your last. It is the deep, still ocean that lies beneath the turbulent waves of your emotions. The meaning of your life is not a secret to be discovered in a book or a revelation to be granted by a master. The meaning of your life is your life itself, when it is met with your full, undivided attention. The treasure you have been seeking is not buried in some faraway land. It has been with you all along, buried only by the noise of a mind that has forgotten how to be still. And so, you are left not with a complex new philosophy to believe, but with a simple invitation. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and on this path, that single step is a single breath. You do not need to become a monk or a master. You do not need to change who you are. The invitation is simply to begin, right where you are. Begin by noticing the feeling of the air entering your body. Begin by truly tasting one bite of your next meal. Begin by offering a silent wish of kindness to a stranger. Begin by meeting your own inner turmoil, not with judgment, but with the gentle embrace of awareness. This path is not about striving to become a better person. It is a journey of letting go of everything that is not you. A journey of returning to the magnificent, imperfect, and wholly sacred truth of the being you already are. The journey home is the journey here.